Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 108 of Hash Church. Whew, I'm slightly hungover, I'm not going to lie. Last night was a lot of good puffing, a lot of dabs, some hash joints, and when I say hash joints, I mean those real pure ones that you saw me smoking on my channel so long ago. So I'm just going to send out... I guess I'm going to send out all the messages here. There we go. So we'll send this out to our panel. We'll send some emails out to Mr. Indra and Mr. Subcool. And then there's always the Skype one that I tend to forget. Over to Chimera. Everyone's a part of this today. I hope everyone's doing well, by the way, out there. I had a great evening last night with Dr. Natasha and her boyfriend Dave, and we ended up with Ed Rosenthal and his wife Jane, and we went and saw Paul Stamets. Picked up his new book. Nice running. Very good, very good. Welcome, Mr. Skunkman Sam.
Howdy.
Yeah, just talking about how I went and saw Paul Stamets speak last night. It was really interesting to say. He's figured out a new mushroom toxin that affects these mites that are killing bumblebees. So pretty cool conversation. Welcome, John, Indra.
Good morning.
Sam in the house. Good morning. Man, I just finished the ICBC conference here in Vancouver. Welcome, Etienne.
Welcome. Well, you know, bees are key. Bees are...
Why are you cutting out on us? You there?
I hear him cutting out too.
Yeah, he sort of did a weird bees are... Anyway, it was amazing, and I suggest anyone that hasn't picked up Mycelium Running, How Mushrooms Can Save the World. This is a pretty incredible book. And definitely worth picking up. Paul was kind enough to sign it for me last night.
Mushrooms are key in this society. That's what I was trying to say earlier, but I had my other audio on, so I was getting a little feedback, so I had to adjust that.
Ah, very good, Etienne. We're back. Hello, Mr. John Berfelo. You made it to Calgary.
I made it to Calgary. Wow, let me tell you, the Calgary Hemp Fest March, amazing. The people here and the consumers, they want it. They're hungry for cannabis here. It's amazing. It was a great turnout, I have to say. Thumbs up to Calgary.
How many people showed up?
Thousands. It was packed. It was like bees. They were like everywhere.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sure you got lots of pictures to share with us.
I'm sure there was a few. I didn't have a chance. I was so busy. But you know what? Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you guys.
Man, I'm glad you made it to Calgary. I know you were a little worried that you were not going to end up making it to your team there that you had sent ahead of you. So that's great that you ended up making it up there.
Well, that hurricane that hit the west coast there, well, almost, was pretty intense. All the ferries got shut down and planes were delayed. And that was just after that ICBC conference. That was another amazing conference that we're having. I mean, Canada's killing it right now.
Good morning.
I liked the ICBC conference. I'm not going to lie. I had a pretty good time. You know, it was different. It was a business conference, very different from the trade show and the expos that we do on the regular. But man, it was great. Lots of good people from all around. Lots of people from different levels, from dispensaries to home grows to applying to BLPs, giant multinational corporation LPs. Like they had the whole gamut basically covered. So. I appreciated that. There were some great speakers. I recorded Dr. Gabor Mate speaking on addiction. Hope we get to put that up on Bubbleman's World eventually. I recorded Tommy Chong, which I'd never seen Tommy speak before. I'd never met Tommy before. I was pleasantly surprised. What a very nice man, and his stories were just so very enjoyable to listen to and very just innocent but out there. I mean, some of the terms that he was using, just people were like, "Oh my gosh, I don't think you can say that." But
He's very matter-of-factly, and
Tommy Chong can.
Yeah, and again, he's just the nicest guy in person, as you know, as he is in the movies. He's highly intelligent, you know, opposite of the dumb stoner that he plays. And his stories, as you say, are, you know, you heard me tell one a few weeks ago about his daughter. So he's very willing to share willingly of his life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he shared a lot of his life. He talked, you know, it was neat to see him in Vancouver because, of course, you know, that's when he was in Calgary as a young man, and they kind of were the undesirables. They ended up getting the boot out of Calgary, literally from the police chief being told, you guys really need to leave. And they said there's an old saying in Calgary, anytime you get a reason to leave, Vancouver. And that's where he got into music and did all the Motown stuff and met Jimi Hendrix, and it helped sign the Jackson 5 to Motown. Like, the stories were just completely insane and fun to listen to. I really, really enjoyed it. So I also recorded some of that, and I will hopefully get that up on Bubbleman's World as well. So welcome, Mark Scialdone.
Oh, I'm muted. Oh, there I am. Mike, can you hear me? Hey, what's up?
Welcome, dude. You know, it's funny. This week, I moderated a panel on extractions for the ICBC, and I was a bit nervous because the panel consisted of Anthony from Apex Supercritical, and the panel consisted of Nadia Shruti, that do the molecular distillation that Brett went and videoed there. So it was very much like I was a little bit out of my comfort zone, not talking about water hash or dry sift or any of the processes that I do. But I have to say it went off pleasantly well, and those guys both were excellent speakers, and I learned quite a bit about CO2 and about molecular distillation. And I was kind of happy also to, you know, bring up the mystery oil of the CO2 and have Anthony absolutely just, you know, not feel like he was being attacked, but being able to, you know, with a real easy dialogue, saying, yeah, you know, there's certain grade or of a welding grade. I guess the welding stuff as well can't have any contaminants because it's being, you know, ignited, and those oils tend to mess with the flame. So it was nice to hear that you could indeed get some CO2 canisters that were cleaned, tested, and assured that there was none of this machine oil present. But hopefully I'll get some of that up as well. I believe my friend Happy was recording the entire thing. So definitely a couple of good panels to share on Bubbleman's World, and I think that you guys will all enjoy it. I did put up one from John Conroy, Robert W.E. Laurie, and Kirk Toussaint, the three main lawyers here in Canada that have been fighting against cannabis prohibition and mainly defending the coalition in the fight for patients to grow cannabis, which they did an exceptional job on. So they are very, very knowledgeable in the ACMPR, the Canadian program from MMAR to MMPR to ACMPR. And I think that any Canadian that wants to find out what's been happening, what's happening, and what may happen will want to go check that out on Bubbleman's World as well, which is the most recent video uploaded. And those guys definitely, they laid it out pretty good. It's a good panel. That's what I'll say about that.
Cool.
Great for you to talk about the mystery.
Yeah, you know, like being a moderator and being someone who would be considered biased for their processes. Obviously, we're all considered biased for the things that we do and promote. But I didn't want to come across like that. I really wanted to be a moderator, not take over the panel and try to talk about water or whatever the things that I am focused on. I wanted to be able to be a monitor and actually focus on facilitating conversation between the actual panelists. So it was good. It went off well. I would have loved to have Tony here to be on the panel, but he was literally on a terpene panel the next day at the Hyatt Regency in San Francisco, which was interesting because we were at the Hyatt Regency in Vancouver. So kind of funny, little coincidence there.
Was there discussion about the butane mystery oil, which I think is probably a different mystery oil than what's in CO2, right?
No, I'm not sure. I think it's the same oil because it's a lubricant that is used between the nozzles and the canisters. When they're plugging in to fill them up, there's this lubricant. So I couldn't 100%. I believe it's very hard to find out what these oils are because they have their sort of secret trademark recipe on these oil mixtures. When you go to test them and try to find out what there is, at least this is what Khalid told us when he was in here speaking about the oil he first found in BHO canisters and then moving on to CO2, and then he started distilling that and finding it present in there as well. Definitely something I asked the molecular distillation guy, Nanad, saying, I know that, unfortunately, pesticides have very much the same boiling point temperatures as cannabinoids. Molecular distillation tends to concentrate them. It doesn't actually remove those particular pesticides. But I was asking, and he didn't exactly know, that potentially maybe those mystery oils could be cleaned out in that molecular distiller, that short path molecular distillation unit. And if so, and if you were able to remove these contaminants, mystery oils, are these toxic wastes, and do we owe ourselves the responsibility of removing them properly, i.e. getting rid of them properly? It's not something you could maybe just throw into your garbage. If you're concentrating toxic waste out of oil, I think they got these guys, the small unit does 1,000 grams of distillate an hour. And they got 10 kilo ones, and then he's like, I could build one 6 stories high that does as much as you want. So I thought, wouldn't that be fun, Mark, if we could put on scuba diving outfits and go inside of a short path molecular distillation unit with the oil spinning around us, just sitting in the middle chamber?
Oh, it's much too hot. It's much too hot. And I'd rather be inside John's extractor.
Well, absolutely.
With all the bubbles bursting and crystals showering us, right? It would be a much better place to be.
And we could all fit in his.
Probably, yeah. The 2,500 kilo one, right?
I think we could fit the panel in his capture chamber.
Yeah, I think the secret, Mark, is to make sure that the pesticide residues are out of what you're putting into your distillation pot in your short path. You're spending an awful lot of money on that unit, and to me, to put anything that has residual pesticide residue into the boiling pot it at is just a crime. So you should use chromatography or ways of scrubbing the stuff that you're putting in there and making sure that there's no pesticide residues to be in there to begin with. So if you're starting with like some kind of extraction or something, maybe you can, again, run that through a filtration process to make sure that there's no residues at that point. You're absolutely right. Just based on the boiling points alone, these things are high molecular weight, and a lot of them aren't meant to distill. They're going to degrade into degradation components, which are going to distill, and that's even worse. And the other point I wanted to bring up, Mark, you were talking about grease. Some folks in their short path are finding little slugs of things that don't dissolve, and sometimes even grease can get into just even your regulatory laboratory short path, because you have to grease all of those joints. And typically they use the Dow Corning clear, stopcock grease, which is a great high vacuum grease. But yeah, anything that's non-polar is going to dissolve that, and you'll see slight residues of vacuum grease in your distillates.
Right.
This is the whole reason why in the beginning I chose to use medical grade gases, and the medical grade gases didn't seem to have this contamination problem. And then further down the road, I found the guy who had this private well in the middle of nowhere, and I got gas from him, and it never got contaminated because I bought 14 tons of it and had it shipped to me. And that's what I've got stored. And what I do with that gas is I run it around in a circle all the time when it's not being used through a set of 6-inch or 6-foot tall pipes that are 14 inches wide. And at the bottom, there's a big wad of cotton. And then there's 1.5 feet of 5 to 7 angstrom molecular sieves, and then 2 feet of activated charcoal, and then the whole thing repeats over again all the way to the top. And there's 3 of those, so it goes in the top of one, out of the bottom, in the top of the other one, back to the bottom, and then top of the other one, and then out back to the system. And generally, that has kept the stuff clean enough so that I've been able to pass nuclear magnetic resonance tests for the past 10 years. And I think that's about as tough as it gets, NMR.
John, when it came to that gas, was that how he extracted it, or how he filtered it, or how it came originally?
it probably came in their tanks because they lubricate the tanks are usually like snap-on fittings, and they're made of brass and steel, and it's ice cold, and so they put lube on them to connect the tank to your storage tank. And that's why I say you're probably better off to construct what I call a sweetener filter, which is the one I just described. And that will generally, and then the other thing, but Todd can ring in on this, a way I've run across to clean it, or to clean the extract, is to go ahead and take the extract and immerse it in a liquid nitrogen until it shatters to a very fine powder, and just keep doing that and doing that. Keep grinding it until it shatters, and then just set it on the porch and let the nitrogen go off, and it'll relax back into oil again. And pretty much a lot of the nasties will matriculate out with the nitrogen as it dissolves back into the air, and it'll clean up your extract until you can manage to find a way to afford one of mine anyhow.
Yes, constantly getting cool side messages. Hey, welcome, Dr. Natasha. How are you doing this morning?
Hi.
Welcome, Dr. Ryz.
Welcome, Dr.
I woke up fairly hungover from last night's dab sesh, hash joint, whatever session. Feeling a little red today after Paul's inspirational talk.
Well, here's a question for the doctor then. Is there a chemical basis for a cannabis hangover? We know the rationale behind the alcohol hangover. There's oxidation that's happening to the alcohol that turns it into an aldehyde, and aldehydes generally are nasty, and there's all kinds of downstream responses. Is there a biochemical basis for a cannabis hangover, doctor?
Just putting me on the spot right off the bat.
I'm sorry.
Well, everyone here on the panel has had it anecdotally, so we'd like to hear the doctor's breakdown.
I honestly don't have an answer for that, so I don't know.
There has to be, because I know we've all experienced oversaturation. Bubbleman, I know Tony, all of us have experienced this sensation.
The one hangover that I'd like to share is that when I drop my tolerance, when I, for whatever reason, just am not consuming at the regular rate that I do, and then all of a sudden I start consuming it again, especially flour, in particular flour, in fact, only flour. When I stop for a while, lower my tolerance, and I go back to consuming flour, I usually wake up with a pounding headache. And I don't know why. So when I go through that, just for good measures, I drop a couple ibuprofen before I go to sleep, and that usually takes care of it. But
possible dehydration?
I wonder if it's just based on an anti-inflammatory vasodilation kind of thing that just happens, that when your tolerance drops, you're lowering your cannabinoids there that are responsible for the circulation that happens in your brain. And so now we're suffering from some minor hypoxia. Or I don't know, just a theory.
That's God's way of telling you don't stop smoking.
Yes. I take it that...
Mark, could it be the fact that you put your ibuprofen on a pint of vanilla ice cream?
Well, the fact that you were saying that the ibuprofen is helping with that situation does seem like you're saying that it probably is something to do with inflammation. So we may not know the exact cause or what the mechanism or whatever. And I mean, it might be something like you're saying, it's whole plant usually. So it's probably maybe a terpene or a terpenoid, or maybe it's a strain that you're consuming. But if it is an inflammatory kind of thing, then you can do something about it, right? And when you said you were taking an NSAID or an Advil, I was cringing because I'm like, no. Because when you take those kind of compounds, once in a while, okay, but if you're taking them consistently, there is a big issue of leaky gut. Right. So I'm always thinking of other ways to target that inflammatory process. So I just want to suggest trying something like turmeric, or an alternative to an NSAID if you're feeling your cannabis hangover. Keep it
I'm sure there
plant-based first.
must be a mushroom intake. I mean, there must be.
It's called psilocybin.
Oh, love me.
Well,
Philosophy.
the non-medical way, or not that it's non-medical, but the non-pill way of me curing my headaches is I have a couple pressure points. And what I do is if I hold my thumbs here, like right by my temples, but sort of just over by my ears, what I can do is when I pull that away after holding that for like about, I don't know, a minute or so, I feel a rush of blood to the head that sometimes can just instantly kick a headache.
There's a
I
good
have a friend who
back here too.
Yeah.
So
Mark, there's a really
Right,
good
right.
pressure point in this
Right.
spot here that's amazing for headaches too, and
Is
similar.
it right by the medulla oblongata?
I guess so, yeah. I'm not a brain person. I can't necessarily get into all the brain geekiness. I'm a gut person, so. But the part here, when it's hitting that pressure point in conjunction with that one, and then there's also some pressure points by your nose.
Right
and the
there.
ones on your thumb, did you try that one?
No, where's that?
Oh my goodness. So there's some right here. And then there's another pressure point. It's like here. And it's for headache also. And if you can't get it because you're feeling like anxious and headachy, you can just do this and rub your wrists together. And that's a very effective like nausea, headache one also, if you're doing all those. And then if you combine, if you want to get extra awesome, like do like lavender, peppermint, spearmint, something like that.
Hey, doctor, somebody was asking, what is leaky gut?
Oh, yay, my favorite topic. Okay, so leaky gut is, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to describe it, but basically what's happening is something is happening along your gut barrier. And that could be anywhere from your mouth to your anus, like anywhere along that whole digestive tract. There can be damage to the surface barriers. So the whole gastrointestinal tract is covered by basically a single layer of epithelial cells. And this is actually a quite single layer. And this layer has to protect you from the outside world. There's also a layer of mucus overlying this, but unless you're, like most people have problems with their mucus layer because you need to be eating a good fiber diet, you need to have a good bacteria microflora to get that mucus layer really thick and effective. And then, so what happens in people is this tight barrier gets little holes in it or little bits of damage. And this can be through a number of different ways. But the most common ways in Western society are alcohol. So alcohol is a big one. So chronic alcohol consumption can really weaken that gut barrier. Things like NSAIDs, other pain relievers can also cause damage. So everyone knows about like aspirin can cause like make your stomach bleed, but most people don't understand that that's like anywhere along your gut. So for people with Crohn's and colitis or gut disorders, taking something like aspirin or other like over-the-counter pain relievers, like other NSAIDs, they can actually cause damage to this gut. And it's concerning because a lot of elderly people, their doctors recommend them take low-dose aspirin or other NSAIDs for prevention of heart disease, which is true, but a side effect can also be gut damage. There's some interesting studies showing that things like exercise, heavy exercise, can actually cause an issue and can further aggravate alcohol-induced gut damage. So there's this trend of people doing these like marathon beer runs and such, and then like you're saying, oh, and then I'm in some pain. And I know I used to do this when I was younger. You know, you drink too much alcohol, you don't want a headache in the morning, so you're like, oh, I'll pop some ibuprofen or Tylenol, no big deal. But that together has a dangerous cumulative effect where it can even further gut damage. So a lot of people who are, you know, drinking a lot and partying, and then they start slowly getting diarrhea as the days go on, and then people start and then you're eating fast food like McDonald's because whatever, that's what you do when you're drunk. And then that further aggravates the damage because there's things in fast foods like certain fiber additives that are made to like as bulking agents and to make things like as fat replacers, because there's this old fear of fat that, you know, now thankfully going away. But all these little fiber additives to replace fat and sugar replacements, they fuck with your gut bacteria in a big way. So there's like a lot of animal research showing this, that when they feed them these, like maltodextrin, for instance, that's a big one. That's also found in some certain sugar alternatives, like, what is it called? I can't even remember what it's called. People put it in their coffee all the time. It's like one of the major ones.
Sucralose?
Yes, sucralose. There we go, sucralose. So the fibers,
sucralose is not good. It's a chlorinated sugar. You don't want to have that in your body at all. No. Chlorine's not good. Yep.
No, but the reason that I know of why it's not good is it can increase the risk of bad bacteria in your gut. So they're like the bacteria in our gut eat all these different things. And why I'm talking about bacteria is because our bacteria population, again, plays a very important role in that leaky gut barrier. So to have an awesome, like, strong gut, you need basically a healthy diet. You need healthy, you need enough vitamin D, you need enough magnesium, you need enough vitamin A, like all these little things just to keep those cells tight and happy. And even zinc, like if you're a little bit zinc deficient, properly. So there's so many different things that can disrupt this barrier. We measure this. In animal studies, it's one thing. There's a number of different ways we can measure it. But in humans, what they do is they give them this sugar drink, which contains like 3 different probes. So there's different sugars that are absorbed in different areas of your gut. So there's some that can be absorbed into your stomach. There's some that are absorbed in the small intestine. And then there's certain fibers they put into this blend that are dissolved by bacteria in the colon, and then that's where they're absorbed. So what they do is they give patients this sugar drink, and then they measure their urine, and they measure all these different sugar probes. And what happens is, depending on how leaky your gut is, these sugar probes can then cross the gut barrier and then end up in the urine. So you drink this sugar probe, wait 24 hours, or I can't remember what the exact time is, and then they measure your urine. And then depending if you have high amounts of these certain sugar probes, they can kind of say like, oh, the gut damage might be in your stomach, or it might be more lower in your gut. I mean, this is still pretty rough, but they've done studies where they show that people eating certain diets, or like I was saying before, those exercise and alcohol kind of experiments, when they do those things, their gut barrier changes. And so we can actually do functional measures of this. So I know this is like a really big new agey topic, is leaky gut. And so a lot of people kind of think it's like silliness, but it is not. This is a real thing. And when you have the beginnings of these gut damage, what happens is you get little bits of your bacteria products and things you eat that's supposed to not be in you. They start leaking into your body. And so a big one is a compound called LPS, or lipopolysaccharide. This is found on the surface of gram-negative bacteria, so like E. coli, just regular bacteria that are in your gut. But when this compound crosses into your body, it causes inflammation because it's not supposed to be there. And so most people are suffering from something called just chronic low-grade inflammation. And so they have, not a ton of damage to their gut, but a little bit. There's little bits of this LPS compound leaking through because there's always bacteria. So if you have bad bacteria and good bacteria, there's always this like epic war going on in our gut for food and nutrients and resources. Basically, it's like a mini fractal of what's happening on our planet. But when this gets out of balance and there's damage, there's more of this bacteria products that go into our systemic circulation. And even whole bacteria can start getting in. And then this can lead to infection and all kinds of other really nasty issues. So there's so many different ways to protect against this. But most people are suffering from at least some low-grade level of gut damage. And when they start altering their, this is an interesting one because a lot of people think they're being healthy by exercising, and it's great. Yes, do exercise. But if you are typically sedentary and do not exercise, if you all of a sudden do some really heavy exercise, there's also a risk of damaging your gut. So I'm always encouraging people, yes, do exercise, but ease into it. And so a really important thing that can happen when all of these things are getting into your gut, all these little bits of bacteria, you're getting chronic inflammation, anxiety and depression. So a lot of people this might be the only symptom you have, and you might feel really off, and you're like, Like I know Darren posted on his Facebook yesterday having some issues with anxiety and saying like, my day is fine, everything with my family is fine, why am I still feeling this anxiety? And a big thing with anxiety is people are trying to connect it with something that's happening in their external reality. And like, so, you feel this feeling and then you start scanning and you're like, okay, why am I feeling this? There must be something wrong. There must be something wrong. And then when you find nothing wrong, you're like, what the heck is going on? But a lot of the time, like, what's happening with these buildup of anxiety or emotions is the feeling is coming and then we attach it to something and then we tell ourselves a story like, oh, I must be feeling this because of this. But if we just focus on that feeling and that anxiety, we can sometimes get rid of it without having to, bring in some make-believe image of why it's connected to it. And so anyway, bringing this back to the gut and bacteria. So there's actually like a clinical trial where it's a small clinical trial where they showed in healthy men consuming, I'll have to look up exactly what the probiotic blend was, but it had a bifidobacteria and a lactobacillus. So these are just healthy bacteria that actually do good things for us. So when they took these supplements in a probiotic form, after a month, they actually had less anxiety, less depression, just their overall outlook on life seemed better. And in animal studies, we can figure out some of the mechanism, and it's complicated because there's a lot of things at play, but it comes back to, again, inflammation, all of these things, because when you're in a state of too much inflammation, your hormones get mixed up, your stress hormones go up. So in this probiotic study, they showed that serum cortisol levels actually reduced after taking this probiotic supplement. So that's one thing that people can do is try to get their gut healthy to help with anxiety. And it seems very...
Can I ask a question? This is something that I'm really concerned about, and that is the broad use of broad spectrum antimicrobials. They're putting things like triclosan, which is a fatty acid biosynthesis inhibitor, into soap. And for Christ's sake, soap does not need an antimicrobial agent. This is all just bullshit and spin marketing. The fact that you're making soaps antimicrobial is just, it insults my chemical intelligence. And so, again, the widespread use of even orally taken antibiotics, amoxicillin, all of these things are basically going to wipe out those beneficial bacteria that you talk about. And so that's why I think before you take antibiotics or before you use your consumer power in buying an antimicrobial soap, you don't need antimicrobial soap. It's like throwing sand down at the beach. You ever see bugs growing on soap? Soap is used to kill bacteria. You don't need antimicrobial agents in there. So I think we really need to be wise consumers and certainly not buy antimicrobial anything if you don't need it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dr. Natasha, I'd like to just toss one thing in here, because I saw a lot of people on the side thing asking that they had Crohn's disease, and because of the Crohn's disease, they were having a lot of sinus headaches. And you mentioned a couple of pressure points, but I would like to, from 30 years of experience, toss a pressure point in that will make a huge difference. If you're having a sinus headache, this particular pressure point will call it to a halt in less than 60 seconds. If you find the right spot and if you put the right amount of pressure on it, and it's simply put your 4 fingers underneath your left nipple, excuse me, present company accepted, I'm talking medically, and follow those 4 fingers down directly underneath it, and then probe around with your finger right there, and you'll feel a very sore spot, and that spot is the triple warmer. And the triple warmer is one of the major stimulations that you can give the entire gut. And when you press on that, it'll hurt, and you press around on it for a little while, and if you're having a sinus headache or if your nose is running, whatever, it'll stop immediately as you push on that point. That was number one thing I wanted to say. Number two, I read a terrible report on the efficacy and use of rats and other animals in medical experiments that pointed out how constructed those studies were and how the flaws in them pretty much negate all of it. So at some point in time, I'd like to send you the article about that, because those poor rats, I've lost some sleep over that after the last time we talked about that. And otherwise, hi, glad to see you here.
Okay, so your first point, that pressure point, very interesting because I use that pressure point. I didn't know it could do things for sinus infections, but I actually tap those points, so it's almost like you can feel it like on these bone points, like you said, 4 fingers below the nipple. And when I feel anxious, for some reason I tap those points. Well, I tap these points here and then right like in my chest, and then those points you were saying. And I just through doing it, I find that really helps with my anxiety. But it's funny because when I try to do it on my husband, that pressure point, he cannot handle it, like the little bit, and he just jumps, and he's just like, and so we're always trying to like, okay, what is going on here? And I always associated it to, he had a bad car accident and he had like lung damage. So I'm like, oh, well, I wonder pressure point there or something. But it's interesting that it's like sinuses.
Well, it's not just the sinuses, like you said. It's the triple warmer controls from the tongue to the anus, and it's all connected. And don't let us slip off into beaver stuff now, but it's all connected as one thing. And when you stimulate the triple warmer, and if he's screaming and if he's in so much pain, I'm going to suggest to you that he's got some other problems in his gut that need to have a look at, because if there's pain at the triple warmer, that's a clear pointer in Chinese medicine anyway, and a few other ways of looking at it, Tibetan, that something's definitely wrong in his lower intestines and his gut. So I would get him examined by somebody that could take a good close look at that, because he shouldn't. It can be painful there, but if you can't stand it, then something else is wrong, because that's strictly the pressure point or the needle point or whatever you want to call it that they use for that particular thing. And I used it for over 35 years, and I've seen people, you barely touch it and they jump off the table. And sure enough, after being referred to somebody, there was other problems going on. And it's definitely a clear indicator. You can have someone standing in front of you with their nose running and reach in, and you've got to stimulate it. You can't just touch it. You got to put your finger on it and roll it around in a circle to the right, and that will cause it to activate, and you'll get some information immediately. Like if you manage to get him to hold still to do it long enough, he'll report back to you in a short period of time that he had to go potty.
Yeah, and it's not like as sensitive as you're saying where he's jumping off the thing, but it's just like very sensitive. So, but yeah, that's a cool pressure point. So yeah, back to your comment on the rat work. I'm very mixed feelings about this. I agree with you. There's a lot of disconnect between what the experiments can show and what's actually happening in humans, and it's sometimes a bit of a stretch when we're trying to take what's happening in this experimental model to what's happening in humans. That being said, I can still see value in some of the mechanistic studies. As an animal lover, I can say this is horrible and shouldn't be done, but as a scientist looking for cures for diseases, I can also see value in trying to understand mechanism.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Preclinical data in animals is absolutely essential. If you start putting experimental drugs that have not been tested into animals and humans, you're never going to hear the end of it, because you're going to be killing people with experimental drugs that have not been validated. So the tranche of preclinical results that are absolutely necessary before you do anything in humans is in animals.
And then you can kill people with the pharmaceuticals. They test.
Yeah, and then it's okay to kill people.
Mark, you're talking about post-mortem, aren't you? Because it's hard.
No, I'm talking about like when we evaluated our hydrogenated cannabis oil, we evaluated in a mouse model where we implanted tumors into a mouse and fed it with cannabinoids, and the only way to determine whether or not this stuff was going to be useful in cancer research is to determine whether or not we can, control cancer growth in animal models.
Oh, wait a minute. You just said you implanted tumors into the mice. And my whole problem with the studies is when you make a study up or you're going to do something to try to understand it, when you've already got a set of parameters laid out that what you think is going to be happening and you construct the study that way, it's inherently flawed. I mean, you know, if you were to be able to sneak out into nature and inject these rats with this stuff while they were going about their daily business, that would be one thing. But when you trap them and put them in a cage, change their diet completely, change their eco completely, you've changed all of it, and now you want to make a study to see how something affects it. Yeah, if you give it a strong enough drug, some of them die, grow tumors and stuff like that. But I still think that the way they go about the studies is flawed. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that the studies are bad. It's bad for the animals, but they're flawed in that there's, you know, when you measure the speed of light, you affect it. So when they start measuring these things happening in these animals, I think it's doing a lot to what's going on. And information derived from that may or may not be valuable.
Well, I can speak to animal models with Crohn's and colitis. So this is a very complicated disease, and what animal models do is, you're right, there is no good animal model that's reflective of the whole aspect of human disease. But what these animal models can do, like for instance, when we use mice models for Crohn's and colitis, there isn't just one mouse model that gets this disease. There's seriously probably like over 50 to 100 different models that we use. And so for instance, for chemical models, we use like DSS, TNBS, we use these models to look at one aspect of the disease, and that might just be surface damage that happens in the gut or the formation of ulcers. Whereas we use bacteria-based models such as like a salmonella type infection, or we use a Citrobacter rodentium type infection, which is similar to like an E. coli infection in humans, but only infects mice. And these bacteria type infections, they also cause a form of colitis. So then we're just looking at the aspect of disease of how do bacteria and the epithelial cells, how do they interact? We're just looking at that one aspect of disease. And then we have immune models. So like there's mice that are lacking T cells, and when these models get really complicated because these are complicated immune diseases. So what they do is they'll take they'll isolate the T cells from a healthy animal, and then they'll inject them into another animal. And by isolating out certain just types of T cells, they can either induce disease or they can cure disease. And so now with these types of cells, they can further modify these cells. And this is called the T cell model of colitis. And so this is used just to model a certain aspect of one immune cell in the disease. So this goes on. And then we have knockout mice where they're missing certain toll-like receptors or other markers where an aspect, so like of not just the whole immune system, because people think the immune system, oh, there's one marker for the immune system. Like the immune system, I've been studying the immune system for 15 years, and I understand the tip of the iceberg of the immune system. I won't even call myself an immunologist because it is so freaking complicated. And so when there's like just one, you know, like I could take a dendritic cell model, I could take a CD4 T cell model, a CD8 T cell model, like on and on and on. So all of these things are looking at maybe just one little aspect of the disease. And then we as scientists are careful because, again, these are animals. And so then when we take this one little piece, another lab has to repeat it. And then guess what? Something like the DSS model, if we do it in our lab and then a lab down the street does it, we might get different results. And we're like, what is going on? And now we're figuring out that the bacteria in the facility can cause different results. And so now researchers are getting better at controlling the bacteria in the facility. Like the amounts of control in these experiments has to be so strict so that we can get an answer about one little thing. And then we take that one little thing and then we put it with this other study. And then after maybe 30 years, we're like, hey, maybe we're getting closer to the answer of this. Like, this is so complicated. So like, it always makes me laugh when there's one study and there's like, we found the cure. We know what's going on. It's like, that is bullshit. These diseases are all so complicated. I don't even know if a cure is possible. But what is possible is figuring out ways to put all this information together and give patients some guidance so they can figure out what works for them and help them find like a way to get closer to remission or control their disease. Because even once you start doing clinical trials, now it gets so complicated because in these highly controlled animal experiments where we're controlling every single thing, you know, right down to the light cycles, the water intake, the temperature in the air.
The genome of the mouse itself. I mean, this is from a select genetic pool, John. We're not out in the field chasing these mice and rounding them up into cages and bringing them into laboratories. These are little white mice called murine, and these mice have been raised for this sole purpose. That's unfortunate, but you know, this is basically what they do. And in cancer, hold on for a second. In cancer, what we do is we do exactly what Natasha said, which is we first look at the cellular level. We look to, in our case with angiogenesis, we look to see how the compounds administered inhibit endothelial cell tube formation, and that's not done with anything living other than the cells in a petri dish. So we look again at cellular levels and cellular responses, and we can look at a variety of different markers to determine whether or not our compounds are effective. But in controlling angiogenesis in particular, which is the formation of new blood vessels, it has to happen in a living thing. It has to happen in a living creature where we're looking at the generation of new blood vessels, and there is no proxy or surrogate for this other than doing this in whole animal testing. And the whole animal testing, again, it isn't, I think Natasha said it right, it usually only answers a very, very small question of, you know, at this level, is this treatment effective? And then you do a lot of pathology. So you don't just, you know, sacrifice the animals. I mean, you actually try to study what happened inside those animals to try to get as much information as you possibly can. So, you know, this isn't just some animal killing exercise by a bunch of people with white coats in a lab. This is really to understand the biochemical basis that these things operate on in living things. And we run a lot of different tests. And you can't say that these tests are inherently flawed because they're developed by people who know a lot more than we do about how to determine whether or not these medicines are effective at controlling diseases in living things.
Also, Mark, they may not be perfect, but they're what we have until we can use people, which I don't think will happen really soon.
Right.
Well, Mark, I'm with you on a part of that, but again, you mentioned they raise specific little white mice that they use in the laboratories, and I know they do that so that they have a standard to work back against. It's gonna, all these mice are the same. I read a lot of studies about mice in Germany. They removed the valve at the bottom of the stomach of diabetic mice, and all of the mice they did, which is in excess of 100,000 of them, got cured of diabetes. And that's all interesting information, and it was put to good use towards human beings. But my point was that the reason that the studies are flawed is because of the way they go about it, and they are looking for specific markers, which they say does this, that, and the other. And I think what we should be doing as a group of people on the planet is looking at all the different kinds of medicines that are available and all the different ways of looking at medicine and health. We need to combine Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic and Tibetan medicine, and we need to combine them all and then start looking for what's bringing these cures about. When I saw the Dalai Lama in 1978, I got, amazingly enough, I got an appointment to see his doctor, and the Dalai Lama's doctor did some stuff. I was having a lot of problems, and I was having sleep problems, and the way that Western medicine wanted to cure it was to give me a CPAP machine. And I went and saw the Dalai Lama, and he had me pee and poop in a cup and spit, and he went over my I guess he spent 20 minutes with his eyes closed with his finger on my wrist listening for subtle differences in the heartbeat. And when all was said and done, he gave me 4 pills. He said, don't take these out in the daylight, and he gave me a bag of green stuff to consume. And I walked away thinking to myself, I got 4 little shiny handmade pills and a box of green stuff. I hope to God this is going to do something for me. And a week later, I was sleeping like a baby. No CPAP machine, know nothing. So what is it that the Dalai Lama's doctor knew that nobody in Western medicine could figure out besides putting me on a breather that worked so well and so quickly? And these studies need to be included in with all the Western medicine is definitely putting blinders on and looking at something from a very narrow viewpoint because they want to find a very specific piece of knowledge. And that's all well and good. And I'm not saying that that's the flawed part. The flawed part is that we don't have our intake open wide enough to allow everything in so that we can reapply it all backwards towards health and understanding.
I think it's starting to shift that way, though. Like, there's definitely more health professionals that are considering like other forms of medicine. And like, for instance, when like my background was in nutrition, so I had a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in human nutritional sciences. And when I started in my PhD in the lab that I did my work in at UBC, their lab was gut research and immunology. And so coming in there with a nutrition background, I'm thinking like, oh, great, everyone's going to want to talk about diet and the gut. And when I did my first kind of presentation to our lab group, I just did a bit of an overview on some ways that nutrition was affecting the gut. And everyone laughed at me. And I was like, what? And this is 2008. And, you know, it wasn't like, haha, get off the stage. It was like, oh, that's cute. Yeah. Diet affects the gut. Okay, yeah. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, okay, I have so much work to do here. So then 10 years later, every person in the lab is pretty much studying some aspect of nutrition or diet. Or so like I did my PhD looking at how vitamin D affects the immune response and the bacteria populations in the gut. And so now that's even shifting, like the person who overtook my project, she's looking at like how ultraviolet light radiation can affect the gut. And so I had theories that it wasn't just what we were eating, but it was also what we were putting on our skin could be affecting our gut. And that also seemed like an out there idea when I first presented it. But a lot of these researchers, they speak science. So if you can explain like a seemingly out there concept and bring it back to some science, or at least some presented in a way that they can say like, okay, you're not just saying some things, you actually have something to back it up, they will listen to you. They will shift their opinions. There's a lot of people who are trying to encompass all these different viewpoints and find creative ways to capture what's happening through research and science. And this can be difficult when we don't necessarily have the right tools to measure something, like some of these energy things or like pressure points or why do these things work. But even there's just more and more research coming out where they're finding ways to tap these types of alternative, I don't even want to say alternative, complementary treatments. And so I'm always fighting for people to just even respect diet and nutrition can affect health. And just through that has been frustrating trying to get status quo gastroenterologists to believe that diet affects the gut. And this is still an issue with some of the old gastro guys because they have an opinion that if it was important, they would have heard about it. So who are you to tell me something? Like it's insane. And so as I finished, I started introducing cannabis to my research group. And the same thing, like, okay, now they all get nutrition, yada, yada, diet. They're all doing nutrition projects. So then now I'm bringing this new idea. Okay, so now what about cannabis for the gut? And then the next idea I'm trying to push is not just cannabis for the gut, but how about pediatric cannabis for Crohn's and colitis? And because one of my advisors during my PhD was Dr. Kevin Jacobson, and he's the head of pediatric gastroenterology at Children's Hospital in Vancouver. And he's friendly to the idea of cannabis research, but he just doesn't quite understand it enough. So there's a lot of concern. And when I was approaching some of these doctors, because I'm sure as many of you know, kids who have Crohn's and colitis and other conditions, they go on some heavy drugs and it's not okay. Like there's better options, and something like topical cannabis or CBD, you know, if we're worried about the psychoactivity of THC, but there's ways for pediatrics to consume. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Colton Turner. He's, so Crohn's and colitis, or he has Crohn's disease. I think he's 16 years old, Colorado refugee right now for accessing his medical cannabis. And so I was listening. He's using cannabis to help manage his Crohn's, and I was listening to one of his YouTube videos, and it really struck me that he was saying he had a flare up and he wasn't able to access his medicine, and he had, like with Crohn's, anything can cause a trigger, and so I think he said pizza had caused his trigger and caused a flare. And when he went to the hospital, they, treated him like, "Oh, you're a drug user. Get out of here. We don't want anything to do with you." And he said, "But if I would have had epilepsy, they would have given me my cannabis." And so it just really struck me. I'm like, oh, there's so much work to do here. And so going back to my situation where I was trying to talk to these health professionals about these ideas, like, okay, well, we know these kids, we put them on steroids, we put them on TNF-alpha blockers, we put them on drugs that increase their risk for cancer, stunt their growth, increase their risk for serious infection, like things that shouldn't happen, things that could be used instead or as a complementary therapy so they could reduce their dose and have maybe less polypharmacy, have to use less drugs. So talking about edible cannabis at this point was too far out there for the professionals I was talking to. So I started with, okay, let's talk about topical cannabis. How about like a belly cream, like for pain? Like, could we do that? And I was speaking with a rheumatologist, and the look on her face was just like, I had a patient who smoked cannabis and just like went into all these like, just bullshit stereotypes. And it's just like this wall where all of a sudden you can't even talk to this person anymore. So it's just.
And that's a surprise because we've got transdermal patches and things like that. So there should be epidemiologists looking at this to see the transfers. What is a proper transfer? What is being absorbed? What isn't being absorbed? I mean, these are key components. And I saw the original patent for one of these like 5 to 6 years ago, and I'm actually seeing people putting out patches currently. So it's surprising to hear that an epidemiologist would be so dismissal, but it also shows how the medicines that are being created are not being studied, and these doctors have no clue because unlike the pharmaceutical companies that are sending out pamphlets on what new drug is coming out this quarter, et cetera, they have no idea that this product is there, available, even out there, along with like Tony's different products, et cetera, transdermal aromatherapy, all these types of things all have key effects on overall health and wealth and well-being. So sorry, doctor, it just surprised me that she would be so dismissive.
Well, it's just miseducation, and like going back to this, like doctors are so busy, they have limited time, so a lot of the content they're going to go with is what they were educated with or what people within their their friends, their network are telling them. So it just comes back to this education, and it's like, please just look at the data. It's like, and it's so frustrating because it's like there is info there, but bringing it back to pediatrics, it's still such a everyone freaks out. So I'm trying to actually organize through my networks, like even just an education night, just to say like, hey, let's talk about the endocannabinoid system. This isn't scary. Like this is in our gut. And so I did some just like PowerPoint type presentations for my network, and like really well received. It was funny because my first time doing this was probably like 4 or 5 years ago, when we have a weekly lab meeting and you're supposed to present, your latest research, and it's usually a stressful thing where, you're preparing your presentation for 2 weeks and you're judged by your peers who are, going to call it your research and et cetera. So when it was my turn, I was just like, I'm going to talk about cannabis. And normally you have to like okay it with your advisor and has to go through all these channels. So I just showed up and did my talk. And everyone was kind of like, because normally this is, early morning talk. Everyone's kind of like paying attention, not really paying attention, boring science talks. That was a well-tuned in audience that morning. They were very intrigued, lots of interest, and it changed a lot of perceptions. Like even one of my close friends who was doing her PhD with me, her mom went through breast cancer, and because of hearing that cannabis was okay, like her parents were actually really worried about cannabis, but then they accepted it into her treatment and she got through her breast cancer therapies and, she's good now. And then another person had other issues and felt that they could use cannabis. So it's just letting people know some basics can go a really far way. And I just want to say, like, people get so mad about, the doctors and the academics and why are they being such idiots? It's just like, they're not necessarily trying to be bad people. It's just they don't know. The info hasn't been presented to them in a way that is reputable or makes sense, where they have the desire to go read more. So it's just, I don't know, instead of yelling at these people, let's try to get the info to them and try to educate.
Don't you think that just keeping up with the latest information is enough of a strain on most doctors in practice, much less trying to find out what's the leading edge stuff? I mean, I all the time have run into doctors over the years who are still practicing old stuff, and because it was effective for a while, even though there might be something new. I can remember sitting across from an oncologist whose nose was running and running and running, and he was sneezing, and he kept saying, sorry. And I said, listen, let me, and I reached out and got a hold of that spot underneath of his nipple. And he said, wow, that hurts. And then 20 seconds later, his nose stopped dripping. And it took a dynamic situation to get him to pay attention to the fact that that could be something that he might find useful. And over the years, the guy uses it all the time. And it's simply bringing the information to light. And this is the problem. We don't correlate everything. We don't correlate all the systems. We don't correlate all the research well enough to start getting rid of the disease problems that we have. And we fail to pay attention to the subtle systems.
Once again, John, it's know-how, isn't it?
It's all down to know-how, and if you don't have the know-how, it doesn't matter if you've got a medical degree, does it?
Well, you get then bias, and you get dismissal, and you get, being treated lower than a human being, which I think some of us have experienced along the way.
I've been laughed at.
No,
it's no big deal, Etienne. You can be laughed at. I've been laughed at.
Oh, I have been laughed at, and I've been laughed at as well as escorted out of VA facilities all over the United States. And I understand, but I think that our watchers need to realize how what you are saying is true. They are so focused on their current credits and what is going on to then shake them out of their little worlds and say, no, there's a whole other. There's homeopathic, there's different ways, that cannabis can actually help, with an individual. And you know as well as I do, you get looked like you just showed a dog a card trick. They just turn their heads and like, you can't discuss this, you can't bring this up. But what it means, people, is that it shows the depth that we still have to do to take information and educate these doctors who we think are the educated, those that should know everything that we're going to discuss with them. We have to realize they're human beings, and because they're constantly lobbied by pharmaceutical companies, they have this one picture that they're dealt with every day. And not every doctor believes there's alternatives or is even willing to listen to the idea of alternatives, right, Dr. Ryz? I mean, you yourself work with doctors all the time who look at you with great skepticism and probably keep you under a microscope sometimes because they think even what you're talking about is crazy, and because they've had so many decades of bias built up, it's hard for them to even move past those walls, to even acknowledge what you're doing, much less delve into it further to understand it.
Yeah, but the big farm is affecting all the doctors. Big pharmacy wants to peddle.
It has for decades now, and that's why we have what we have currently, correct?
Well, they're busy sticking their nose into cannabinoid research now because Big Farm wants to control all that. I'm sure they're looking at terpenes with a new eye, and they're looking at all the stuff that the cannabis movement is bringing to light with a new eye, because it's hard to turn your head away from something that actually is efficacious and works. And in a lot of these cases, cannabis is working. What we don't know is why. We know we have a lot of cannabinoid or cannabis receptors in the body, but still nobody really understands the body well enough to know why on any of this. And the disturbing part to me is when you go to a doctor nowadays, you should really do all the research you possibly can to carry that in with you, because otherwise you're going to get whatever it is he's been trained by Big Farm. Or go to a Western doctor, go to a Tibetan doctor, and then go to a Chinese doctor, and then take a look at the whole thing as a whole. And as a whole, it stinks right now. So I'm done.
Hey, welcome, Tony. How you doing, dude? How was your panel the other day on terpenes?
Oh man, how you doing? It was really good. Big turnout. The whole room was packed, and I even saw Frenchie in the audience too. He was sitting in the middle aisle. He came in a little bit later.
Cool.
But it was good. They had really good questions about the difference between pure plant profiles from cannabis and people taking different types of terpenes that are not from cannabis and trying to duplicate basically Mother Nature.
Sure. That's going to be the majority. I think that'll be the majority of what you see terpenes as, maybe very in the near future for a short period of time. It's such a high-end product when using cannabis, really nice cannabis to make it, as opposed to figuring out a way to deceive.
Yeah, I gave him a pretty good comparison. I said, well, imagine if today you invited me on this panel to cook you a meal, and I could choose to do a farm-to-table meal where I source everything from Sonoma, Grass Valley, local areas, and I make this amazing, unbelievable, all-organic farm-to-table meal for you. Or I set up a really cool 3D printer, and I printed out the exact food. I mean, it's the same on paper. I've got the proteins, I've got the carbs, I've got the flavoring, I've got everything down. I said, so what you're asking me is, what do I think about, keeping it real and keeping it all 100% the way Mother Nature intended it, or recreating it. So as long as you know up front what you're getting into as a consumer, that's, I think, what's the most important part. So you can make those appropriate choices. There's different markets and different price points for different people. But, there's nothing wrong with it. But I think that the deceiving part is when people try to cut corners or, recreate something that's not exactly how Mother Nature intended it, and they don't tell you. I think as long as you know going in, that's the most important part,
Yeah, isn't that a kind of a confusing point between the way they label things, Tony? Like, or this is organic, this is inorganic, and so forth. I mean, don't you think that's causing a lot of the problems? In addition to what you said, the people who make these labels and decide what goes on to them are part and parcel of the problem.
Yeah, as well.
There's definitely, to me now, there's already these sort of manipulative assumptions that are out when people say terpenes. Right away, I'm like, oh, kind of like the way I do when people tell me they have hash. Generally I'll be like, usually my first question is, does it melt? And it's not because I'm completely obsessed with having to have it melt. It's because 9.9 times out of 10, the melt factor is definitely, it's definitely going to tell you the purity. Whether it tells you the quality or not, it's going to show you that there's a fairly, near perfect purity if it's melting away to almost nothing. I like the example you used with the farm to table meal, because that is a perfect example of those differences right there, those little subtle nuances that we are yet perceiving. We're just looking on paper and going, no, these are the same. Look at they're the same. They're the exact same thing. I just have a very strong feeling that one day, I can't imagine our science right now is where it's going to be forever, that we've reached the limits, that we've acquired all the knowledge of how to perceive and record data. I think that it's going to change enormously in the next 20, 30.
Every day. It changes every day. Every new discovery.
By the decade.
Yeah, but
Which is interesting.
You won't see it every day, but maybe Natasha, I don't know how much reading of the literature you do. I read the chemical literature every day, just as much as I play music, and I look to the labs, various labs that I follow. I look to see what their latest publications are, and yeah, we do have a crystal ball. It's called the literature, and you could look into the literature, and you could stand on the shoulders of giants and shoot rubber bands at stars from solid scientific foundation that has basically been established. And it's great. I mean, if you look at like some of the work that's going on now, that's being published in the cannabinoid journals, is absolutely cutting edge, fantastic. It's great reading. I know. I've just read.
How much money have we spent on cancer research and putting money into cancer science? And then I think of how often do they cure or stop cancers, compared to say like people eating weed that never did any science. They're just like, I heard if you eat this plant, you can get better type. I love science. It's done an enormous amount for me in my own personal life. I love alchemy. I love science. I just very much believe that the things we'll learn in the future will show us that some of the things we know today, or at least think we know, are incorrect. And that's a frightening thought.
Yeah, well, today is today, and tomorrow is the beginning of the future. So it's like when you see new stuff that inspires you, I'm sure, Natasha, if you're reading the literature, you see stuff and you could pull stuff together that only you can do that because you're familiar with someone else's work, and you can make a connection to this enzyme and that active site, and you could just start pulling stuff together on your own and start filling in all the space in between, which is what science is, which is really a quest to understand what's not known. And so to me, it's like, it's a modern day Christopher Columbus. Oh, now he's a bad example. A modern day explorer, modern day Magellan, or a modern day David Bowie, Space Odyssey. You know, just everything. When I look at the periodic table, I look at the 12 notes in music, and I'm like, man, I could make infinite combinations here. That I could put the Legos together like no one's ever put them together before. And that's what's cool about science, is because you never know what you're going to find, and that's why, when you're in the laboratory and you have that aha moment and you've invented something for the first time, you know it, because it dawns on you that you're like, wow, I took what this guy did and what this guy and what this guy, and I put it together, and no one's ever synthesized this before, and here it is.
Which was what was neat about watching Paul Stamets speak yesterday, because right away he's like, I'm not a scientist, but then it was like, but I basically did epic shit that they wished they had been doing. Like, he's just finding all these. He's sending mushrooms to, what was it, the Defense Department, Natasha?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but it was like every bigwig, he was somehow connected, like bigwig organization. He was like, oh yeah, and then they asked me for help with this disease, and so I got on the mushrooms.
Oh, this is when I got my National Geographic Award. But the science thing, Mark, he's sending these mushroom compounds to I can only imagine what would probably be one of the most intense labs in the world. It had a name, and it was basically a national security thing. They were trying to find compounds that were effective on smallpox. And, you know, if they get a 10, okay.
BioShield program.
The BioShield program.
The BioShield.
He said if you Google stamus and smallpox, you'll find from the BioShield program of when he was using agarikon actives, type of mushroom.
Right, from the agarikon. If you get a 10, it's enough that they're going to look into it. And he was pulling out hundreds, and one of his numbers was in the 1,000.
Wow.
So, it's like $1 billion patent or whatever. And then while he's telling us that he patented it, he's like, oh, and I just wanted you guys to know I'm open sourcing all these patents.
Yeah, and like, so a lot of the stuff he was doing is still like early, like he's still doing cell culture type stuff, but he's taking basically little bits, breaking up the mushroom, finding like all these little bits that can be used effectively against different viruses or different bacteria infections, like all kinds of different things. Like, he went deep.
Yeah, and it was amazing how he was, in the graph where he shows the terpenes, and he's showing water extractions, and then he's showing different chemical
in mushrooms. This was, Mark, he was showing terpene profiles in mushrooms.
Yeah, well, not profiles, but just showing this graph of how all the things that he could fraction out of mushrooms, and he was just like, I didn't understand how much everything is in there.
Mushrooms are so fucking diverse. They have their own kingdom, right? mushrooms are as diverse as animals are.
Yeah.
You know, you think about like a mouse and you think like an elephant, that's how diverse fungi are. They're all over the place. They're absolutely essential for life on Earth. And yeah, they'll be here long after we're gone. And yeah, I mean, just think about the plethora of, of new discoveries that can be made by looking at all of these types of things to help with human nutrition or human sickness. Absolutely.
What's interesting though about Paul is he always says, I'm not a scientist, or I mean, he is a scientist, but he doesn't necessarily have the big degrees or whatever. But what was fascinating and about his style, and back to what you were saying, Mark, about like using PubMed or some type of search tool, you can create new ideas. You don't need to physically be in a lab. You could, seriously, one of my favorite things to do is just get deep into PubMed and go down a rabbit hole. And you start reading one thing and you're like, I wonder if this
follow it to a reference,
yeah.
and then they got a bunch of references.
And then you go. Yeah. And then what I do is I screenshot each of those things and I put it in a PowerPoint file and I start building these.
4 hours later.
Oh, not even, like 8 hours later.
8 hours later.
Right. Seriously, like someone will say like, hey, my friend, like for instance, my sister had a friend who had scleroderma, and I had never heard of this condition. It's basically like fibrosis, so scar tissue that forms everywhere in your body. And we study, it's a problem with Crohn's disease, so they get scar tissue formation through the inflammation and then the healing, the cycles that continue on, and it's basically thickening of the scar tissue. Yeah. And so anyway, and that's part of the major reason why these patients need surgery. So like 70% of Crohn's patients will need surgery at least one point in their life to get part of their gut removed. Eventually, some of these patients have no gut. They have a bag on their side. So this is the fibrosis is a very important point of this condition. And so with the scleroderma, all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, this is fibrosis of the whole body. And so I went down this crazy rabbit hole of like, I have like a 200-page or a PowerPoint, and I'm just putting all this info together. Right. But by understanding what's happening in this disease, so looking at fibrosis in the liver, in the heart, in the skin.
I was just going to say that is the hallmark of liver disease and liver degradation, and also degradation in the pancreas, which we know cannabinoids will help because they're antioxidant properties. And the key thing is that they're fat soluble, because a lot of antioxidants, our diets are rich with antioxidant. But antioxidant that's fat soluble is usually kind of like a little bit of an anomaly, because things are like vitamin C or ascorbic acid or metal ions that could, like iron, which could shuttle in between 1 and 2, again, can intercept single electron species, which are called radicals. And in general, you don't want free radicals building up in biological tissue, only for specific reasons on specific pathways. But the real, I think, kicker of this is that when you start looking at the homology between, say, pancreas and liver, and you start seeing this fibrosis, you start seeing there's an underlying theme here that's all underpinned by essentially cannabinoid system for one, but certainly a probably whole host of other receptors that have yet to be discovered.
So I just want to bring up another point because that's interesting about all what you're saying, but a concern that is coming up in the literature is that about certain forms of smoked cannabis being an issue with liver fibrosis. So I'm not sure if you've seen those studies, and I'm very intrigued by that also. Okay, I'll put together some of the info. I think it's more an issue of the smoke and maybe the way they're consuming it, because they're not seeing those types of concerns when they're using different types. Or I'm wondering, like what you're saying with all these fibrosis pathways, like some of them could be increased or decreased. It's modulating these pathways. But yeah, what else?
I want to introduce the concept again of the biological switch. And the biological switches, we were talking about hyperemesis and how, again, in some patients, they get cannabis and immediately they start getting nauseous. Well, again, when you think of it like this, like I'm in a house right now, and I don't have every light on in my house. And certainly if I just fill all my cannabinoid receptors and I turn on every light in my house, I don't need to have every light on in my house. I only need certain lights on in my house. And so I think, like angiogenesis for one, there are very, very subtle changes that you could make to growth factors to make them pro or anti-angiogenic. And so what Mother Nature does is in the endothelium, she uses things called MMPs, which are matrix metalloproteinases, to actually degrade pieces of collagen, and those degraded pieces of collagen basically create hormones and signaling to other pathways for other differentiation between cells and a variety of different things. But the point is that when you have abnormalities in there, and in particular with free radicals and stuff like that, you start intercepting all of these pathways and start generating byproducts that, again, the body or the immunological response, like with psoriasis, for example, it's basically an immunology gone crazy because all the lights are on in the house, and we don't need all the lights on in the house. We only need a couple of lights on in the house. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to make an analogy here so that everyone can understand that sometimes all cannabinoid receptors don't have to be going 100% of the time to get the therapeutic effect that you're looking for to control some type of abnormality. The biological switch.
Whoops. I love everything you're saying. And I want to bring it back to like hyperemesis syndrome. And also with like what you're saying where when all the receptors or things are overstimulated. And most people think like with the endocannabinoid system, that's just CB1 and CB2, but we know there's all these other receptors. And so with cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, one of the things that's really interesting is that, I mean, this is a rare condition, but people who get it, it's the hot showering, right, that provides relief. And so that's one of the things that I find fascinating because it's like, what is it about this heat thing? And so if we look at other receptors that cannabinoids can signal through, there's the TRPV receptors.
TRPV1, right? We were talking about that, right?
Yes. So TRPV1, it's a heat sensing receptor also. And so people, I know more of it through looking at making pain bombs with chili oil, so capsaicin.
Capsaicin. So capsaicin is the cannabinoid that opens up that receptor.
So capsaicin, it's not a cannabinoid, right?
No. I'm just
the
making an analogy. It's the molecules are the keys and the lock is the receptor.
Yes.
In this case, not the cannabinoid, but the capsaicin. Okay.
Yes, good point. So the capsaicin is the key, and then the TRPV1 is like the lock, I guess. So that's the receptor. Yes. So there, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I was talking, Dr. Ian, what was his name? McGregor from Australia. Did you see his talk, Marcus? But anyway, he was talking briefly about hyperemesis syndrome, and I was speaking with him after, and he had a patient population that had this condition. And so I was telling him about this case study where someone is reporting that they were at some science conference and someone had on their poster that they had taken 7 patients who were suffering from this condition, and what they did is they tried putting a capsaicin cream on them. So I can't remember what the percentage of capsaicin, it was low, like 0.5 or something percent, just enough to get enough of a tingle. And they found after 30 minutes, their hyperemesis syndrome went away. So this is so interesting because right now the only thing they can tell people is don't use cannabis anymore, go on a cannabis holiday, which is okay for some people, but people who need cannabis to, help with their pain or something where they need it every day, they need options where they don't necessarily have to stop their cannabis, but can maybe figure out ways to modulate their system. So this could potentially be something where using a cream with chili pepper oil, not necessarily capsaicin, it could be other TPRV1 receptor modulator. All right, Mark, what are you trying to say?
I was going to say, I have a friend who swears by this, and I don't recommend it. We've talked about this on Hash Church before. When he suffers from migraines and only gets like 1 or 2 a year, he takes a little bit of cayenne pepper and snorts it. And it immediately, he turns into a piece of shit for like about 5 minutes, like, yelling and screaming, but his migraine goes away. And he claims he just gets a rush of blood to his head, and whatever it is that the capsaicin, or I don't know.
It's the capsaicin. It's absolutely the capsaicin.
But it burns his, right.
Hey, Mark.
No, and there's a therapy where they take really high dose patches of capsaicin. Like, so normally humans can tolerate like 0.75, like some people will get burning, but with these patches, they can get up to like 10% capsaicin, and they actually have to anesthetize people, like put them out to treat them with this. And then they go, it's like a 2 or 3 day procedure, but they have like no pain for months at a time. So people will go in for this high dose capsaicin treatment. So your friend has essentially figured out how to do his his high-dose capsaicin treatment through snorting it. That's so funny.
For about 5 minutes, you don't want to be around him.
Dr. Natasha and Mark.
Yeah.
In 1926, there was a doctor who was touring the United States promoting taking capsicum in large doses. He would take a tablespoonful, or put it in a little grape juice and take it. He would, as part of his demonstration, cut his arm with a razor. And by the end of the talk, his arm would be closed and pretty much healed up. He would also dab the capsicum on the cut. And I myself, for years, have taken a heaping teaspoon or tablespoon, whichever one's bigger, put it in a glass containing about a couple of shot glasses worth of grape juice, stir it up, and drink it down. I don't really get any burning from it, and it really keeps my blood clean. I've had a lot of lab tests, and they're always surprised at how clean my blood is. And you go to the VA, and they test you for everything, whether you give them permission to or not. And I've had guys say to me that my circulatory system, though it is compromised by an enlarged left ventricle, they say that I'm not lacking in blood anywhere. They gave me the gamma camera test where they inject you with horrible things that I hate to think about, but it shows up on the gamma camera, and my heart was fully engorged in blood. And the guy was like, I don't know what you're eating for a diet, but you should keep it up. He goes, because your heart's measuring out like you were 19 years old. And so the capsicum is some great stuff. I've been using it for a long time. I put it on open wounds. During the Civil War, it was well known among Civil War doctors to shut a wound down from bleeding, to put capsicum in it.
So, John, here's the question. You know, it's a long chain prenulated benzylamide would be a great fat soluble or extraction soluble substrate capsaicin. Have you tried extracting?
Oh yeah, I extracted so much of it. Listen, the first time I extracted some, we opened up the thing to take it out of the container, and we had to run out of the building because the overhead from the capsicum was so powerful that my lungs refused to function even a tiny bit. I tried to take a breath in, and my lungs just said, no, fool, you're not going to breathe in here. So I ran outside while I was still conscious, and I noticed behind me the mice running out of the building as well. So, yeah, I have.
So what you're telling us is that it's a mice repellent?
Well, listen.
It's an everything repellent.
Literally, every time after that. I even noticed that we had to put special clothing on and gloves and protect ourselves because the extract was so potent and powerful that we would ventilate the building, open up the door, and leave the lid off the thing for a while, probably letting a lot of capsicum terpenes get away. But that we had to do that before we could empty it out of the chamber, because when you've got 150 gallons of that you're dealing with.
So what's the concentration of capsaicin in the extract itself? Like, what are you getting out besides capsaicin in the extract?
You know, I don't have that paperwork in front of me. This is Hash Church Sunday morning. You'll have to contact me afterwards to get that kind of information.
But there are like habanero terps and, you know, I don't know, other pepper terps, you know.
Oh yeah. We've done every kind of pepper. We've even done smoked peppers. And when you're done extracting a smoked habanero pepper, it turns completely white. And it's just, there's nothing left in it. All the color comes out as well. So you can imagine how beautiful the oil must be if the peppers are red and smoked. The oil looks fabulous. Just don't breathe it or get near any of it. We used to do it a lot for the companies that make the stuff you spray in your eyes. You know,
pepper spray.
Yeah, anti-rape drug. It all depends on how you look at everything. You know, everybody talks about supplements. Well, guess what? To plants, earthworms must seem like supplements in their diet because they're running around doing all the good stuff and pooping on their roots, right? It's just how we look at everything. And I'm afraid that science has narrowed some of the stuff down so fine that there's no real opening for the kind of innovation that we should be looking at. And that worries me that that we have reduced ourselves to such a fine filter prior to looking
but
at.
John, there's new frontiers. I mean, as old frontiers close, now we can again stand on those foundations and shoot rubber bands at new frontiers. So I think it is a continuous science is a continuous process. I mean, certainly like, especially with cannabis, and maybe this isn't the case, but there's kind of like these S curves, and S meaning like kind of like shaped like an S. So there's like a lot of innovation that's happening now, but soon it will mature and it will plateau when the cannabis industry becomes a more mature industry. But we're at the front end of that innovation where there's all kinds of new things and widgets and gadgets and things to be invented, and you know, the all cannabis vape pen. I mean, there's all kinds of shit to do, man. I mean, there's not enough hours in the day to do everything that needs to be done.
I know. I mean, listen, I buy into the fact that some of the stuff that the people are coming out with now, the new younger people, is amazing stuff. It's hard to keep up with it. I was never into, even though I've been extracting oil for I don't know how long now, I never was doing dabs until recently. Marcus talked me into trying a dab. And so I went and got a dab machine, and now I quit smoking flowers like a week and a half ago, and I can't even smoke them anymore because they taste like hay. And
well, bong rip, man. Bong rip, motherfuckers. What do you think? We haven't done one in a while. Let's go.
I got mine.
There's D420K, man. Give it to us, D.
My nail burned out yesterday, so I'm in trouble.
Bong rip, mother lovers. Let's go. Bong rip.
Tony woke up for that.
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed.
There were some good comments. There was like, I think Tony's asleep, and then someone was like, kind of looks like his dog right now.
She's actually sitting in that same position, just like she just ate a huge bowl of food. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here.
La 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 lo.
Everybody wants to see you. Come here.
There's thousands of people waiting for your
appearance.
Come here. First you think Tony's talking about a kid, right? But it's a dog, isn't it, Tony?
It is a dog. Come on, Ollie. Come here. She's like super shy. It's pretty funny. Come here. Come on. Come on.
This shows you what kind of heart Tony's got, you know?
Come here.
He's an empathetic being.
Come here, Ollie. Come here. I know you want to come on. There you go. Let's get on Hash Church. I want to see you. There she is.
So does this make you the dog walker of Terps?
Yeah, we're going to put this in her ear. She's going to be plugged in. Now she can hear you. Say something.
Hello, little girl.
I see a lot of people.
She's looking at me with the craziest face like, what? What's going on there?
Man, what a kitty.
We saw a dog yesterday at the West Summit. It was a little tiny white poodle. I'm not kidding you. I took a little video of it, but it was basically a white poodle that must have been about 8 pounds that was shaved, where like the legs were all shaved and the like body was shaved, but it was kind of like a little, like proper, you know, big poodle that you see like a show poodle. And this dog had little tiny pink sunglasses, rimmed glasses, shades, wore them with a bow in its hair, and was like, did not have a problem. And then had little pink dyes like in its hair, and had a whole outfit, and literally didn't like try to take the outfit off, was taking pictures, and a full on dog model.
What did the owner look like, Tony?
You know what? There was so much action on the dog, I don't think anyone even saw the owner.
I just wondered if the owner had a small set of pink sunglasses on and a bell, because a lot of times dog owners are like that. You know, they just go. they twin up with their dogs. I mean, I've seen tons of pictures, but once upon a time when I lived in San Diego area, I used to see people walking their dogs around there, and they would dress like their dogs. So after you described that, I thought, I just wonder.
Are you sure it wasn't their dogs dressing like them?
It probably was, because those were the days when everybody was really high. So my memories from those days are like, that was good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Congolese for the win.
Yeah. Except for I don't have any more Congolese.
I think I'm going to try to come see you Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, let them know, because there's things that are going to be organized, and if you don't go, those things won't be there anymore. They have to be reacquired. So
yeah.
Give me at least a 2 days heads up, because I got to take a drive to go get some materials that we'll need to perform that. I'm sure you understand.
Yeah, if you wanted, I could be there. Definitely be there Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay, but that stuff goes away if I get it on Tuesday. Maybe there's still some on Wednesday. So anyway, when you know for sure what day.
Well, I know for sure.
All right, which one of those days?
Tuesday or Wednesday. Which one do you want?
That was funny.
I know the exact hours and the exact days.
Just pick one, Tony.
I'm afraid to ask you the rest of it, but that was good.
Go Wednesday.
I don't care. Wednesday's probably good.
Wednesday's good. Wednesday's good. I have to go to LA on Thursday, and then in that area like Thursday. So Wednesday's real good.
Okay, then I'll make sure everything is where it's supposed to be.
Nice. I went to Wien last night. You guys know who Wien is?
Yep.
Wien, California?
Wien.
Oh.
Wien, the band from New Hope, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
How was that?
How'd you like it, Tony?
Oh man, I used to listen to them back in the late '90s, and just brought me back to when I was
chocolate and cheese, right?
Yeah, you know.
You know, that is one of the most beautiful things about music. And as I brought this up yesterday when we were in the truck, Natasha, with Ed Rosenthal and his wife, and David as well. And just mentioning that lucky I was to have gotten into the Grateful Dead in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and be able to have that history some decades later. It's just such a great feeling of nostalgia that you get when you listen to these different versions of different songs, and that's one of the magics, I think, of the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brother Band, and Fish, and a lot more bands now, that you get to have these intense relationships and experiences through this music, and then they basically hold the memories for you throughout your life, and you gain new ones as you're continuing to listen to them. I just have a real appreciation for it. I was stoked when I saw Paul Stamets with the Steal Your Face on his hat. Although yesterday he was actually wearing a hat that was made out of a mushroom. That hat was pretty nuts. You don't see very many. It was just like yours, Tony, but it was made out of a mushroom.
How do you know mine's not made out of a mushroom?
I don't.
Yeah, that's why it goes with me everywhere I go.
The mushroom was crazy too. I don't know if you touched it, Marcus. It was like they had a sample of the mushroom that was used to make the hat, and it was like, it felt like leather. Like it was like mushy, and it was like a pelt almost. And they had a display of all the different mushrooms he was talking about. I posted a picture of it on my Twitter account if you want to see. And if you can help identify them, please tweet at me. I'm at Natasha Ryz on Twitter. But anyway, the mushroom that he used to make his hat, it had such an incredible feel, and it was fun just to watch the audience members come up and touch it, because people would be like, oh, I want to touch it. And as soon as you felt it, it was like you could not stop, because it had such a interesting spongy texture that you were just like I think it could be a replacement for leather. So I think vegans out there should start checking. I can't remember which mushroom it was. Which one was it again, Marcus? For the
Yeah, you know, I'd have to. I recorded the talk, so I'm going to put it up on Bubbleman's World. But I will apologize right now, and I really don't want to hear a bunch of comments because you cannot imagine smoking that gram hash joint and then going in there and holding a video camera and having to constantly look down because I didn't want to. And it's shaky. There's movement, so please don't complain. I had no tripod, but the information, if you just listen, don't watch, you'll be very happy to listen to the information. So I did my best anyway. It was too good not to share. I even ran out of battery time and then recorded it with my phone, so I caught even the ending. The last 2 minutes, I had to record on my phone. You probably saw that, Natasha, as you were right behind me.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I was impressed by how big the crowd was. Like, there was a turnout. So lots of mushroom lovers in Vancouver area, so good to see. And it was funny because Paul went through it, like his theories are quite complex. He had, mushroom factoid number 1, or I can't remember exactly what he was calling it, and he had kind of these 8 major points that he built up to at the end. And I mean, this is his ideas are complex because he's getting into like things he's observed within his own backyard or glimpses he's had when he's been walking through the forest, and kind of how all these ideas came to him, and over time they all accumulated to create this moment of like, aha, we can save the bees. So, but at the end he kind of goes through all this stuff, and I mean, like, it's complicated. Like, I was writing notes, I have to even talk about it. P-coumaric acid, that's the one thing I do remember. So that's one of the compounds that is emitted when wood is rotting. And so that was part of the reason why he was finding the bees were attracted to the areas where he was growing mushrooms. Anyway, watch the talk because I don't want to say it wrong at this point because I might mess up how it actually works. But what was interesting with the crowd is he gets through all these points of how all these little bits and how it led to how this type of mushroom can help save the bees. The whole crowd was like cheering, and he was like, whoa, this is the first audience that actually got that enough to applaud. So it was a highly sophisticated, good audience. They got. He was speaking for an hour and a half, just intense, like blah blah blah, and like it was quiet in there, like it was very attentive, the right crowd.
Yeah, and he spoke fast, and he was speaking, maybe about at least 10% of the words he was using were like Latin terms in terms of like mushrooms and compounds that were so like that you probably had never heard before, rolling off his tongue. Every once in a while, I'd be like, that didn't sound like English. That sounded like he just made up a language for that Latin. He speaks very fast too. Like, I'm sure he was probably, on some form of a mushroom or not, maybe an edible, maybe just the one that he was wearing on his head was affecting him. I don't know, but it was good. It was good. Hey, welcome, Marcel.
And I just want to say, speaking fast, but entertaining, like listen to it. It's easy to follow along and enjoy it. He's a fabulous speaker. So even though it's complex and dense, the little bits and the little stories are just fascinating. Even if you don't understand all the science, like, it's worth listening to. It's very important information, very relevant. And he even gave glimpses, like he'll be in the new Star Trek? Is that what he was saying? Like, why was he saying watch the new Star Trek?
He said, I can't say anything because I've signed NDAs, but 2017 Star Trek. And so we assume that he'll either, be some character in a mushroom, portrayed as a mushroom guy, or maybe he's and helped create unique ecosystems with mushrooms for a Star Trek. I don't know exactly, but he definitely gave a little hint. Watch Star Trek 2017.
He was going to be helpful in colonizing Mars with that could be an idea like that. Maybe.
I did. When he was talking, I definitely could picture like Elon Musk hearing about it and wanting to get, flying down on his private plane to meet with Paul Stamets and find out how they can inoculate Mars. Because this is one of the first times I saw Paul speak. He was involved in a project where all these different groups, and I may have mentioned this on Hash Church before, so I won't go too deep into it, but basically he was given a large pile of soil that was and gasoline and toxic waste basically. And I think there were 8 or 9 of these piles, and each group, you know, there was a group of engineers, and there was a group of botanists, and there was a group of chemical and scientists, like all these different experts in different fields were like given this earth, and it was like, you need to make it living, you need to make this alive so it can grow and stuff. So everyone else couldn't do shit with it. They're all trying all these different things. Paul's like, I'll inoculate it. He figures out the mushroom that he's going to use. He puts wet cardboard that's been spored up on top of this thing. Over time, the mushroom starts, you know, he's got that electron scan microscope, which he was showing us pictures with last night, and he started photographing the mycelia matrix. And as it was developing and creating, the contaminants in the soil started to affect the integrity of the matrix, and it would start breaking and start having, you know, almost cancerous properties in the way that it's no longer producing the type of matrix it was before. And then he managed to photograph these weird little silver, like, square jewel spaceship things that show out of nowhere, and they just basically soil, keeping the mycelia from creating its matrix. And so once he did that, the mycelia, it took a while, but it eventually cleaned up a lot. Like, I don't know if it's a sort of phytoremediation or if it's literally a taking apart, like literally disseminating this, these compounds. Attracted birds and insects. The birds were trying to eat the insects on the mushrooms and the mushrooms, as well as larger animals. The birds shit seeds on the earth, and they grew grasses and flowers and all sorts of things. And in a very short time, he just created this incredible living chunk of earth. And the photos that he takes you through are just, you know, absolutely inspirational. That was one of the first times I saw Paul speak. And of course, he got like a mucho standing ovation because, you know, a lot of people, we get together, we talk, we move things forward in our industries. But Paul just seems to be, every single thing that he's moved forward is a part of the next thing that he's moving forward. He doesn't seem to have any waste. I think he's an alchemist more than a scientist, maybe, even though he says he's neither.
He's a very smart guy. I met him when he was in his 20s, and he was a very, very smart guy back then, and he's only picked it up a long time. But you can't always get people to pay attention to these kinds of informations. You know, the oil sands people who are busy pissing away a lot of our good water, especially up in Canada, to get the oil out of the sand. I gave those guys a demonstration how they could use gas extraction to clean the sand without using any water whatsoever. But they just weren't fucking interested in that. They had, you know, it was much easier, and they could get the water because nobody was really pitching a bitch about it until everybody saw how fucked up it was, excuse my French, with what happens to the water afterwards. But you can't always get people to pay attention to good things like that. And that's the same problem that Paul has had over the years. People always hear it and go, oh, mushrooms, and that's cute.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he said it a few times that, you know, it's like, oh, nobody was listening to me back then, but they're listening now. It's nice to see. The bottom line is truth seems to make its way to the top if you can uncover it and you know, push it as hard as you can. It eventually makes it to the top. People eventually hear it, and then yeah, I just like Natasha said, the turnout was good.
That's exactly what my teacher used to say. Everything eventually floats to the surface, both the curds and the turds.
The curds and the turds.
And the oil.
That's where discrimination comes in.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's pretty funny.
Or a separatory funnel.
I don't think
this as well.
That's going to have to be a hell of a separatory funnel to let the turds and the curds through. I've never seen one quite that big, but I guess they exist.
Very good. Minor awkward hash church pause. All right, that's done.
Well, ball rip then. Let's do this.
Exactly.
Didn't we just do that?
No, we talked about doing it, and it looked like myself and...
I've been doing it. Oh, that's stabbing away, and it's I'm pulling a mark right now.
This is actually a deja vu bong hit. It's just like I just did.
Well, I'm down, that's for sure.
Deja vu. I'm getting my little thing ready. Where are you at, Johnny B?
Johnny B is in Calgary, I think, at the event that
I'm at the Calgary Hemp Fest, and you know what? Wow, Mark, we jumped off the ICBC, flew out here, and this fest here, guys, it's really good. The consumers, they want to learn, and it's the first for Calgary, and I'm gotten people coming, doing some bong rips behind the booth, thanks to the guys on the other side here. They got rigs hooked up here. You were talking about those plastic machines that make things. There's one beside us. And it's just got Hands of Hope. You got Aurora. You got so many different great people here supporting the plant. It's really cool, man. I'm really happy to be part of this. For the first for Calgary, it's definitely a thumbs up for Calgary.
Very nice. I had to mute everyone. Thinking, sorry, I muted.
Don't forget about me. And I got this guy now. And well, they can't hear you, but this is the CanadaMedicalDispensary.com, and these guys are kind of hooking up patients that are getting things going and trying to work within the system with what's happening here in Canada. There's lots of good education going on from bong shops. We got. There's just such a great place here, guys. I'm gonna walk around again. I showed you that in the beginning, and then before everybody got here, I kind of walked around slowly with a laptop to show you who was here and what was going on. So once again, you know what? The education is great here.
Love it.
Dude, sweet, very sweet. We just got to mute your mic when you're not talking because I'm getting a little bit of feedback on the headphones there. And sorry, I had to mute everyone else. I thought there would be one microphone that I could mute, and then it would make it go away because I've had that happen a few times. But it was just a technical difficulty. That's all. Here? Oh no, it's not.
And it was great to see you, Natasha, at the ICBC event. I think that was really cool to see what happened was going on there. I don't know if you guys have talked about it yet or not, but I was in transit. But that was another really good event that's just went on. Now we got the guy here from Hands of Hope. So we got people coming here and dabbing and saying hi, and one kind of stop by and say hi to Hash Church. So you're gonna have the camera here, and people just will come up and wave.
How you doing, Jeff?
All right, I guess I'll be the guy who breaks the silence. I had my torch going. That's the reason I wasn't talking. Way for someone to pick up.
Well, thank you, sir.
I know you don't want to hear my torch. Come on.
So I was gonna bring something up, Etienne. And
okay, this is cool. Here's the 3D printed bong. Tony, you were just talking about 3D printing. This is the guy's got the 3D printer here, so they did a 3D printed bong.
And it's designed like a turbocharger from a car.
It's designed as a turbocharger from a car.
You got the propeller wheel in the middle.
What's the material made out of?
What's the material made of?
It's PLA plastic, corn based.
PLA plastic,
okay,
corn based.
PLA is
in the metal bowl
polylactic acid.
Here, right? And then you can hit a pull in there. And
so it's a what mark? It's an acid.
You'd like polylactic right here, acid. Place it right here, and then.
What do you think about that, Mark?
I think I'm going to stick with my mothership and my ceramic bowl for now. But
yeah, I mean, it's probably
something to win.
I think. Mark?
Oh, do you guys want my opinion? So yeah, polylactic acid's a common biopolymer that's out there, and it degrades in the environment, which is really important. But you could mold it into parts like that, and you could make it into styrofoam containers. And I think like a lot of those like cheap styrofoam dishes, I think a lot of it's got polylactic acid in there. It's a very degradable polymer, so it's a good for the environment. It's a byproduct, I think, of the cheese industry, which I think is where lactic acid comes from, at least the cheap sources of it. Can you make it derived from, something like hemp or something like that? Probably not economically, but yeah.
I can bring you over to it.
What about chickpeas? Could you make it from chickpeas? Number one. Number two, Mark, when that stuff's degrading, is there anything that it's degrading out that might be, are we breathing in something from it?
It's basically bacteria turning it into food. and then ultimately turning it into CO2. So it does release CO2 back into the environment.
What about when you smoke it with heat applied to it?
I'm sorry?
Like if you were smoking out of that.
Yeah, so that's a low melting plastic. So I wouldn't want it. Have you ever smoked out of a plastic bowl? Any plastic bowl?
A plastic bong in 90.
Tony's big on plastic bowls.
No, but the bowl itself isn't plastic, right, Tony? Isn't it a metal bowl like that's on like?
Yeah, well, he showed us a bong.
Like
but let's say he puts in a nail or whatever. Or puts his own little glass bowl in there. I guess if you put a glass bowl and just smoke herb out of it, what do you?
It's gonna melt. I mean, this is like packaging plastic material. It's not a high melting, like high performance plastic that you'd find like in a baking application or like in your microwave. Those are high temperature nylons, which have a lot of additives in there, so they don't degrade. But most plastics, like polylactic acid, don't have much of a thermal stability, and they're going to immediately just start degrading. Yeah. So, and also, I was just going to say for the old school bongs, like the old school tube that had like the metal, like the aluminum tube with the thing. Those bongs are really porous to a lot of the bong water kind of effluent, if you will. So it's difficult to get one of those things totally clean without just etching the surface of the plastic. So if there's bong stuff in the plastic, you can only assume that if there's some layer, there could be like plasticizer leached out into the bong water itself at some point that makes the whole thing discolored. And I don't know. I think plastic is something you want to avoid coming in contact with
heat.
Yeah, well, just with cannabis in general that you're going to consume, right? I mean, either as a bong material or as a pipe material. I don't see plastic.
There was a movie about that, bong water. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yeah.
I got thrown out of the dorms because we pimped my RA who got us in trouble for smoking in the dorms. We tilted a bong that was just full water right next to his dorm, and we knocked on it. We took off, and when he opened it, it just spilt all over his carpet. It had bong water smell all over his carpet. So yeah, that got me thrown out of the dorms. So yeah, bong water is nasty.
Nasty stuff.
Not when you're vaping, though. It's only nasty when you're burning, and in particular, it's extremely nasty. Like high school bong water was like buds getting in a bong. Yeah. That's like one bowl of bud getting smoked through a bong makes that water smell so foul and nasty.
Well, the Mongolians had those big water pipes, and I have it on good word that they usually use some horse urine in those pipes that they smoke that wild tobacco from.
Horse urine.
That's some nasty bong water there now.
Horse urine, huh? Where was this in?
Mongolia on the steppe.
So have you seen the horses in Mongolia?
Yeah, they're small, but they still have all the same equipment the other horses have.
Yeah. No, I just want to make sure that everybody understands what kind of horses are in Mongolia. They're real small ones.
Yeah. Real small. I mean, their feet nearly drag on the ground when they ride them. I went there, and they were going to get me on a horse, and I'm like, are you kidding? I could be on the horse and stand up with 1 foot on either side.
Yeah, that's how small they are. For me, they're like a pet. They'd be like just a dog,
Yeah, I didn't want to get on it. The guy's like, okay. And I'm like, no.
I'm not even allowed on a regular size horse. I've apparently passed the height and weight limit to be able to ride a horse.
No, you just need a Clydesdale, bro.
No, you know how you can tell when you're too heavy for a horse? They find every tree branch and every low-hanging obstacle they can to scrape your fat ass off.
They run full speed towards the trees.
Yeah, I've had it happen, so I know it's not something I heard. It's the truth.
The truth. But how subjective is the truth?
Well, on Hash Church, pretty subjective.
Well, the truth hates everybody equally, so I guess everyone.
The truth's like a bell, If there's a room full of other bells that are open to hearing it, when you strike the bell, they'll all ring. And so when you
that's called resonation.
Well, the truth is the
Right?
thing
Resonance.
it's all waves. The whole thing is waves, man. It's all vibe.
Yeah.
No negative.
But they have to resonate at the same thing, right? They have to all vibe out at the same.
Well, that was Rupert's
resonant frequency.
theory.
That's why bad people like to hang together. You know, bad people resonate and they hang together. Good people resonate and they hang together with good people. You know, just depends on how you want your bell rang.
There it is, in a nutshell. I like that. It depends on how you want your bell rang. I feel like I need to ring my bell one more time here on Hash Church, episode 108. It was so easy to wake up for Hash Church this morning and do it after being nervous about moderating a panel that I just wasn't comfortable moderating. But you guys are easy to moderate. You guys are just like my buddies. We just hang out, we shoot the shit. Sometimes we talk over one another. Sometimes we are more respectful. But either way, I do appreciate all of you guys coming around and sharing your time and opening up these dialogues for all the people who are watching and listening. There really seems to be a following of this sort of core group of people that they need this every Sunday. I'm certain if we missed just one, people would be like, oh, that was weird.
I missed y'all last week.
You did, and we missed you, man.
It's like walking around this Hempfest, guys, and everybody's saying and waving to Hash Church. You know how many people that are owners of companies that watch us faithfully, and they're just so happy to see what we're doing here. They discuss it, and we talk with you about the panel and the people you brought on here. Everybody's like, wow, what Hash Church has become. And I'm going to walk around here, you guys, and kind of show you the event that's getting a little bit busier. Then I'm going to tune out, and I just want to say, right on, guys.
Hey, thanks for coming out, Johnny, and sharing.
Hey, Mark.
Thanks for sharing with us, walking around, and I guess I'll see you in a couple of days, and we'll film another Puff Wednesday.
I will see you tomorrow, my friend.
Float plane.
Float plane.
Float plane Puff Wednesday episode. John and I have gotten all excited about Puff Wednesdays again. We both got busy. He had his own channel. He was pumping a lot more at the time, but now he's got more time, and so we're gonna kind of do that weekly Puff Wednesday thing, and it's fun. We have a blast, man. I don't know if you guys checked out the last one, but we went up to Grouse Mountain. We took a big gondola up Grouse Mountain. Then I brought my drone and I flew it around Grouse Mountain to give you guys a really beautiful view of the mountains and Vancouver City. And then we just kind of hiked around. We bumped into a couple of grizzly bears up there that were just like, I guess, Grouse Mountain used to have, what did they used to have? They had wolves. Like it was a pack of wolves that they saved from the movie industry. The movie industry was going to kill these wolves, and Grouse Mountain was like, you know what? We've got a beautiful place. We can pen them on. We'll make it a place people can come and learn about wolves. And they, they basically treated these wolves pretty great until their passing. They weren't going to do it again, and then I guess these two big bears from the industry, the movie industry, came out. I'm not a big fan of animals in captivity. It was super trippy on that Puff Wednesday to be as stoned as we were and walk around a corner and just see like these two grizzly bears standing there with like people standing on this other side of a tiny fence. They definitely, let me tell you, even if they had that shit coursing with electricity, if that bear wanted to get out of there, it would be pretty much a very quick experience, a very fast. They were just so big, I couldn't believe you could go stand 5 feet from two grizzly bears. So check out that Puff Wednesday if you want to check that out. It was
epic. Let me tell you, it gave me goosebumps. We walked around that corner and it was just like, oh, I can't believe this grizzly bear's here. It blew by, and we were just like, it was. Yeah, you can see it on our faces. It was probably one of the most, for me, it's one of the most funnest epic. We went around that corner like, hey, we're dabbing right here. Come on. Let's take the drone out. We went around a corner. No one even went around that corner. We found we just walked in the perfect spots and no one was around. It was like, that's what we did.
Yeah, it's fun. It's nerve-wracking at the same time because when you're
you're stressed out.
You're putting energy into trying to get a good little show to fall together and for everything to work out, and we have no permission. We have no we're just doing it. We're like, we'll ask for forgiveness later rather than for permission now. Not sure if that's how you guys like to go about things sometimes, but I'll tell you, forgiveness is much easier to ask for sometimes than permission. So Not telling you all to do things without permission, but I sure do a fair bit of it. So what's going on, Marcel?
Not too much. Just got back from Glassroots. It was a pretty amazing show. Had some great experiences. Hung out with some amazing people.
That's awesome.
We pulled a, we were doing these coins at the events now, and at Glassroots there's a company called HIS Glassworks that had polishing equipment. So we were actually able to create a coin from the beginning to the end off-site. So that was kind of a first for the Starship in Every Garage Project 33. Here's a slice of the coin. I'll hold it here, and you guys can ask me some questions if you like.
Pull it back a little bit. Pull it back a little bit. A little bit more.
You guys got any ability to read it? It's pretty small.
Pull it back a little more.
Something to eliminate fear.
Yes, it says amplify compassion to eliminate fear.
Nice. Dude, I remember you talking about this when it was just a concept and a dream, and now you're doing it. And now it's like you've done a coin from start to finish, like at an event. Like how kind of trippy. Manifesting your own reality. You're like, oh, and coincidentally, there was an equipment place there that had polishing equipment. It's like, no, dude, you manifested that shit like 2.5 years ago when you were like, I'm going to create this thing that 2 years I'm completely batshit crazy when I talk about it, except my core group. And then eventually it's going to leak out into the... I just think it's cool to see how you've maintained exactly what you said you were going to do with it. And it's... you've hit quite a few milestones with it. You got a great core group, and it's nice to see it expanding.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely been a really like interesting process of like standing with the idea and not letting my artistic integrity get sidetracked by economic pressure or it's definitely been a difficult at times, but overall, like, I mean, now that we're kind of on maybe like a cresting point where we're going to start to get some downhill momentum building up, it feels really, really worth it.
You got to stick with it. When everybody tells you to quit and it's not going to work, you got to stick with it. My patent languished for 8 years, and now it's just turned into the hottest thing since sunburn. And so what I can tell you is, don't give up, because sooner or later, if you stick to it, it'll come around to you. There's no such thing as an overnight sensation anyway. You can forget about that, unless you're talking about big accidents or something. But if you want to get somewhere on top of the pile, you got to climb, and it takes a while to get up there. So stick to it.
Yep, you got up today. You did it yesterday. Get up today, do it again. Get up tomorrow, do it again. That's how all of us have been successful. We just get up every day and do it. Do what you love, and it's great to see exactly go from an idea to fruition, and now it's a reality. And now it's a reality that how many people share with you, Marcel. So thank you very much for taking the risk, of self of person to actually go out there and actually challenge yourself, but also shows how universal your idea was by how accepted it was. So much respect.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're just...
I picture Marcel.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to throw out a couple of, updates about the project. And, we're... Dan Collins is on board fully, and we have we're about to start a campaign to fund his documentary going into the editing stage. And, that's one of the major things that we're working on this week is kind of finalizing the details of how people are going to be able to interface outside of just purchasing coins, which remains to be really the best way to build the sacred economy, because when the coins go from being something that we created to being something that somebody purchased, it's like activating the software. It's like a phone, but until you activate it, it's just a broken phone. So really, like the currency doesn't fully come alive until there's a two-way participation between the people that are creating it because they have the time and the energy and the craftsmanship skills, and then the people who are able to purchase it because they have the the means and the motivation and their skill set lies outside of, or their geographical location makes it so they can't come and be a part of the actual creation of it. You know, because what's important is for people to realize that it takes the whole cycling for this to really start going.
Right. Well, it's cool that what you're doing, though, is that you're not just trying to like create a value out of nothing, like the way paper money or a Bitcoin itself, without people engaging in what you're trying to create with it, still exists on another level through collectors, who it's very natural for them to be like, oh, I'll pay like $1,500 for that. Like I collect those type of things. So that's what's unique as well, in the sense that there's really already a value in the art form, in everything that you guys it's already been set up, sort of speak, and now you're just directing it into a different I guess platform, rather than the platform that when Indra was saying, you know, it takes a while to climb up to the top of the pile. I picture Marcel, I'm like, no, he's in a bulldozer bulldozing down the pile, so it's all even. I think that's what this whole trip about what he's doing is, to not build a pile. And I know John used that as a metaphor. He wasn't speaking exact. I was just thinking, knowing you and your project, that yeah, you're going to be more like, you're just trying to create this more even playing field than the current one that...
Well, right. I mean, the concept of this thing was really, it crystallized a large bit when I was watching a video with this... they were talking about the dangers of fractional reserve lending and having this larger and larger debt balanced on a smaller and a smaller amount of value. As the value of the planet is discovered and put into play, there's like exponentially more debt being created for each piece of value. And there's this sort of system that works to make that happen, where you just have to constantly be feeding fresh meat. And this system is designed to do the same thing, but we're going to take the fresh meat off of that pile and put it into this other pile. So we're basically just shoring up the foundation, or not even shoring up the foundation. We're just taking energy out of the unsustainable system, and we're using it to create art. And when people appreciate that art, it's starting a new pile of resource that exists for a different purpose.
Well, to them, this a sustainable system, because they all have printing presses. And therein lies the problem right there. Perceived value is gone down the toity, because they have fooled everybody into thinking all you need is this piece of paper right here, which represents this. And truth really be known, I mean, if things got really bad, you can't eat gold either. And so, all our glass or anything else, but you know, a time when the paper would go away, things of value would persist. And something like what you're talking about could persist as a perceived value, whereas paper, there's nothing backing it up. And what backs up your coins is the coin itself. And so that's how I see it.
Exactly. I mean, the coin itself is backing it up, because they are sufficiently rare. And the other thing that's really important to me about this is the coins are made from a space of gift. We're not a corporation that's making profit to create the coins. Like, the people who cut the coin and polish the coin and make the coin come and they participate based on a desire for positive change. So rather than make a trade based in debt, we're able to, when we trade with coins, we're making a trade based in gift. So we've already gifted to the situation the trade medium, and if there's taxes that are going to have to be paid, we'll be paying taxes. So I don't have I feel that this is an art project, and I'm just pushing it as an art project, but as it develops more and goes forward, there's undoubtedly going to be some challenges on how to treat it in terms of using it in people's books and stuff. But you know, the reality is that it's bartering, and that these are their artwork that has intrinsic value. So again, I mean, I can't speculate in front of so many people about what my thoughts are, because they aren't fully researched. But I think that there's a lot of interesting meet here, where when you're not trading IOUs, you're not regulated by the same types of rules that they have for like a complementary currency. Like if I said, hey, I'm going to make a Eugene script that glassblowers are going to use and printed up Xerox papers, like I would totally be able to do that, but there would be definite rules and limitations about how that could be used.
Those are called coupons.
Right, exactly. And we're going for something a little bit more revolutionary than a coupon.
Yes,
and
well,
a token.
Yeah, tokens and coupons.
Token.
Yeah, like a subway token. Like in some cities, to ride around in their little rapid transit little train that takes you around into downtown, you have to buy like a little 50-cent or $1 token, and their little metallic token that's got an image of the city or the train on it or something like that. It's a decorative little token that you use to go through the turnstile to get onto the train.
Every one of those has clearly printed on it the word token, so it's not mistaken for money, though. All those
Yes.
coins have token. All the tickets and stuff have ticket or token marked on them, because the government is very particular about what's being used for money. And so I see, Marcel, you're walking a thin line, but gee whiz, it's all depends on how you look at it. A thin line from the air can be an 8-lane road from a man who's grounded.
Right. I mean, I feel that there's as an art project to increase awareness about the situation that we collectively as a race are in. This is, whatever the outcome is, the more we use it, the better the outcome's going to be. Like if there's some sort of action that comes because we use it so much, then I mean, that's just forward progress of the art.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's people who sell thousands of prints of paintings, and so it's going to be hard for them to beat you in a court of law about that. I mean, tax will have to be done amongst the users and not you. You're just making the original art, and you sell the original art, and then what happens to it after that is out of your hands, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why there's no central bank that people can come to and exchange the coin, because the central bank is a starship in every garage. So each person that participates is acting as the entire system when they interact with the gift economy. So to me, that's really what makes it so awesome, is that one person, you could just decide that you're interested and come and find your way to my studio and be involved in creating a coin from the beginning to the end.
Could a factory in China just mass produce these things and completely, take the worth out of them just because they could make them on such a tremendous large scale?
It's pretty unlikely. I've actually developed procedures for making Marini I can make a Marini bigger than anyone else on the planet right now. I mean,
yeah, for the novice, what does that mean exactly?
A large Marini last year was probably 10 pounds. I'm routinely...
Hold on, time out. What is a Marini? For those of us who don't know.
Sorry, I'll slow way down. Okay, so a Marini is the technique for making these glass coins. And what we do is we make a giant log, and it has the image going all the way through the log.
Little coins.
And so then when we slice it into a slice like this, you can see kind of the lines on the side that are the letters. Here's a chunk of cane. So this one says, "Gift is the new bling." So when you slice this thing up, I mean, basically so what I was saying is, if somebody makes one of these borosilicate Marinis, last year, if you made something that weighed 10 pounds, that was very much a large-scale situation. Since we started using the glory hole and practicing with the team to make these Marini, we're getting finished pulls that have 20 pounds of image plus the end caps. So I'm working with pieces of glass that range from like 30 to 45 pounds, which is, it's on the large scale of glassworking regardless of what kind of glass you're using, whether it's borosilicate or soft glass. So doing it with borosilicate is kind of like having the like extra brass balls or whatever, the extra level of being like, oh, I'm just, not only am I going to make this big Marini, but we're going to make it out of a higher melting point, more resilient glass.
Higher quality material.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much more pure of a material.
And probably more expensive.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the raw material costs around $20 a pound.
So can I ask you a question? In the 70s, the guy at LA at the college taught glass there, who was famous. I don't remember his name at this moment because my memory's foggy anymore these days.
LA.
But I watched him put together the Lord's Prayer on a huge piece of glass by inserting rods in different colors and so forth, which they eventually pulled out using the oven so that a tiny piece of it about the size of a human hair could be looked at through a microscope and saw that the entire prayer was there in perfect condition. Do you know the guy I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's Dick Marquis, I believe.
Right, Dick, right. I couldn't remember his name. But anyway, I saw a lot of his work because I was there around that time. I wasn't studying glass, but I was studying something else. But he was doing some really amazing stuff with putting the same kind of thing that you're talking about. I guess I haven't really seen one of your coins close up except for the screen, which isn't a very good approximation of it.
It's exactly what we're doing. It's pretty much the same process. I mean, I wasn't there to see precisely how he manipulated the material, but like the manipulation's basically similar. At the end of his process, he would have had to get the chunk that had the whole Lord's Prayer in it, hot with the glory hole on a blowpipe or a punty, and stretch it down to make it go from, you know, a foot in diameter to probably whatever his target size was. And that would
actually, it was 3 feet in diameter. It was huge. And that's what was so amazing.
So how many, you just had a lot of people on the team, and you know, really
listen, I went there for a week every day at lunchtime and so forth to see, you know, the progress, because it took them forever to do it. And there was constantly people changing. He was there most of the time, but it was crazy watching it happen.
Right. You know, and so again, you know, like that was a massive project that, you know, it stemmed from somebody who just is incredibly tuned into the nature of glass, who learned a new technique. The Italians showed him Marini work, and he's like, wait, what? And, you know, and I know that that's part of his tradition in glasses. He just, you know, went for it as soon as he delved into that. And I mean, deciding to make the Lord's Prayer as a Marini, I mean, it's a huge task. Like, we're doing statements with, you know, 25, 30, 35 characters. And that's, you know, those are fairly large builds. Now I'm surprised. I just assumed always that the Lord's Prayer build was done in stages, where they made like a part of the page and pulled it down, and then pulled down the next part, and then stacked those together, and then pulled that down. So you're telling me they did the whole thing in one shot?
I'm pretty sure. I have some old pictures. I'll have to look for them in my picture stash, because back then we didn't have digital. And so, but I was taking a picture of the original thing because it was huge. You know, it was like 3 feet across, and it was not a perfect circle. It was kind of multi-sided. And when they got onto it and started doing it, I kept thinking to myself, how in the flipping hell are they going to do that? And then I just kept going back at lunchtime on different days, and somehow or another they managed to finagle it. And it was just, I'm still impressed, because when I saw the little tiny piece and saw how clear it was afterwards, I was just floored that he could actually manage to do that.
Well, I also think Marcel covered this before, because the Chinese will copy it. They'll take a digital image, they'll place it in the glass, they'll do whatever they got to do to make it look like it. And just like they're doing motherships for $40, they don't care about the quality, the look of it, or anything like that. It's just representing something. And for them, it's representing object equals cash. And how many of them can they make? But I think, Marcel, didn't you say you had inside each coin there was a special, you were putting some kind of special cereal or some kind of special...
Some of the coins have some UV reactive glass in different areas and stuff. Really my feeling on the Marini is that a close inspection of the Marini, if somebody's actually looking to find a counterfeit, it should be, pretty easy to identify any kind of counterfeiting, just based on how dynamic the making of a Marini is. Like each slice, at this point we're photographing each slice, which also is helpful, so you can kind of, once we have those logs published, it'll be really easy to pick out the counterfeits, because if they're not on our list, you'll be able to figure it out by where the different bubbles are and so on and so forth. Like one Marini might have a bubble in the center, and then the other, then there might be a bubble that goes through 15 coins by the R, and then there's a bubble that goes by the, next to the point in the 5.0 for a few coins. So,
can I make a suggestion? I don't even know if this is possible, but if you could change some of the glass in it to a denser glass or with a bit of metallic in it that can't be seen by the eye, but when photographed infrared-wise would show up because of different heat dissipations. And that would be a way that the Chinese might not get onto for some time, if that would even work.
We could also make our own glasses. So if we use only blends, if we use a blend of glass that we choose, we would have to know what glasses we blended to get a certain color.
The Chinese always use leaded glass.
Right. Yeah.
They use lead in food too. Isn't that a coincidence?
Yeah. No, they put lead in everything.
Honestly, because of what we're doing here, if they came up and created a bunch of coins for us and we started to trade in them, they would basically just be doing our work for us and providing more trade medium. And then people could collect the ones that we made as the actual art they're collecting, and we'll just trade with the Chinese ones. It's still better than $1.
Well, and you keep innovating. You keep innovating and changing your coins, and they'll keep trying to follow and keep trying to be in your footsteps, right? I mean, change the features of the coin itself, right?
I mean, based on the months on this, I don't think the Chinese are in any hurry to follow down my footsteps, just to be honest.
Yeah, I think we're way ahead of ourselves on future stuff here. When you see the first couple of Chinese coins show up, then worry. Until then, I wouldn't give it a second thought.
Yeah, I mean, if there's Chinese coins, then I'm really interested to see what my life looks like at that point. Go to it.
Well, they have to be watching Hash Church, right? Isn't Hash Church broadcasted in China?
No.
Yeah, it's being live translated right now to my factories there.
Well, I think you got to start worrying, Marcel.
Well, we've had some talks about making a Hash Church coin for you guys.
I love the idea of a Hash Church coin.
Heck yeah.
But then, who would have them then?
Who would have them?
You would have them all, Indra. They all go to you.
No, I'd have to just send them out to all the viewers because I'm not into that sort of thing. I need what I need to make my life get by and happy, and I'm not in a hurry to climb on anybody's back to depend on them for anything. I've seen that. I was born on Army base. Dad was in the Army. Grew up all around the world in many different countries, and I've watched clearly how the United States has treated people around the world, and I know what it's like to be in a minority because I grew up in Okinawa in Japan, and there was like 6 white kids, and all the rest of the kids were Asian, and they treated us the same way that we treat minorities in this country. They wanted to kick our butts. They called us names. The whole 9 yards. So I've been on the merry-go-round and seen all the other rides, and I'm like, I want to make the only footprint I want to make in the world is if I did something good, I hope people remember that after I'm gone. But I'm not going to be foolish enough to think that legacy is anything other than another spelling of illusion.
Right. On the glass subject, have you guys ever seen one of these before?
Little Turp cap.
Yeah.
I think maybe Etienne a couple of weeks ago. That one right there, maybe. It looks like a bowler.
Yeah, I showed that a couple of weeks ago.
We talked about it a little bit, Tony. Does the top of it, does it get warm enough that it would turn the color of the terps yellow?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't used it before. I got this from Todd. He let me check it out, and he was telling me to put my terps in here. But I was wondering if, it's a cool concept.
It works. I've had it for a couple of weeks. I was away for 10 days on a little road trip around America, but when I'm here, I've been using it, and it's interesting. It's definitely a way to. I think that the glass is a little thick, but it definitely does heat up the terpenes so they lightly evaporate as opposed to just go. So that I like about it. So it also depends on your terps and what you have access to. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, access.
Yeah, Andy's Hammers Pipes makes those.
That same guy that did the hash hammer.
Yeah, the hash hammers. He makes that. I had him make this because I got one out of Canada that was made for a banger. And I had reached out to those people saying about having make one for my D-nail. And so that was the concept that we came up with there, because we wanted something that was at the top that you could, grab without the heat transfer.
Well, it's a great terp chaser, because if you do a dab, right, and then you cap it, this is your carb cap, and you have terps in your carb cap, then you get a little terp chaser.
But I also did find, and that's what Bubbleman was referring to, is if it changes the color, because I have terpenes that are clear, but after using it for a bit, they are no longer clear. They're kind of an amber color.
Inside this thing, or from dabbing it?
Yes, inside of there.
Oh, yeah, of course, because there's heat, oxygen.
Yeah. So it oxygenates and breaks it down.
Yeah. I like the concept a lot, though. I have to try it out. That's all. I don't have anything crazy glass related, just that.
It's just one of those new technologies that go with the new concept that you've been able to promote with the terps. Now there has to be different ways to ingest the terps. We know that directly putting them onto a hot nail is rather inefficient, needless to say, much less depending on your temperature. You can, destroy the terpene, the flavor altogether. I think the first time you and I met, we had, you gave me some terps and we didn't check the temperature, and the temperature was too high. And I could tell immediately the difference in the flavor between the, when it was at the right temperature to actually ingest it. So by having—
What is the right temperature?
385 to 420 on a silicone carbide on a flat coil.
Pure terps?
Yeah. Very low.
I prefer it on the Vape Exhale, I have to say. That Vape Exhale gives the most perfect pure terp rips.
Yep.
Out of any other unit that I've hit. Now, it's the difference between putting it right onto a hot dish and then putting it into cool quartz.
Well, and that's key.
Sliding it into that convection.
Yeah. The quartz rod, because they do have glass rods, and people that tried the glass rods have complained before, and I said, you got to get the quartz rods.
Ah, of course. Makes sense.
That's where those complaints are coming from, where they're like, oh, I tried it, but it doesn't have the flavor. And it's really low on the Vape Exhale. It's just you turn it on and then turn it off.
Well, the 385, what does that work out to watt-wise if you've got a battery that's putting out to your nail?
I don't know, really low.
Because mine goes from 0 to 200.
I think the way you got to, just the best way, visually monitor it. If you drop a terpene on something that you're trying to vaporize and it immediately vaporizes, it's too hot. It should drop, pool, get just kind of spread out, and then when you carb cab it, it actually evaporates all of it in that perfect vaporization moment. Then you've got it. But if it's like burning, sizzling, immediately gone, then it's way too hot.
Yeah. Okay. I took that first bottle and I tried dipping the oil on the end of a toothpick into the bottle and just getting a tiny, tiny amount of it on there, and then putting that in the pipe on top of another layer of oil that I already put down in there so that the terp wouldn't be facing the ceramic bottom part of it.
Yeah.
That was an amazing, flavorful toke.
That's the best way to do it, in my opinion.
Oh, well, I'm glad I lucked upon that. I came to that conclusion because I saw the bottle and I'm like, holy crap, is this going to be one of the most expensive highs I've ever had? Or is it going to be one of the highest highs I've ever had that didn't really cost that much considering the joy that it brought? And it was the latter, of course, because
well, if you terp dip, like I was showing you the vial before, you could get 50 to 75 of those. So it's really relative when people say it's expensive. It's cost is reflective of the plant, but how you use it's important. If you're just dropping full drops onto the nail, yeah, and in 10 goes, you're going to be gone. But
yeah, you got to learn to, I've had to learn using this dab pipe all over again how little you can put in and still get the same effect, because I was putting so much oil in the beginning that it shot out the sides and drained down the side, and I came to the conclusion that you're overdoing it. So I kept, reducing it. So now I mean, the next time I have some terps, I'm going to be much more judicious in the application.
Oh, you mean on Tuesday or Wednesday?
Say again?
I'm getting one mic here. Oh, it was. I had to mute you, Marcel. I was getting a wicked echo. I was saying that you mean Tuesday or Wednesday when Tony comes and visits you, and it would be good for you guys to decide in the near future, so I can tell Bishop from the conference I'm at here recently who wants to bring the rotovap.
Mike Bishop from Height Off.
Yes, Mike. So he says he wants to stop by the same day that Tony comes by. So let me know at the end of Hash Church exactly what day that is. Because then it's Wednesday. Perfect. I'll tell Mike Wednesday it is, and you guys are going to yeah, this is going to be cool. I want to be there on like Google Chat, guys.
Yeah.
Looking up the CBD.
Yeah.
Tony's in the basement mixing up the medicine. Hey, how about Robert Zimmerman and his Nobel Peace Prize? Wow. Literature, Bob Dylan? You went over it last week.
Well, I have people who think on both sides. Some people say it's a great thing. I know people who are literature people who say that just degraded the entire situation altogether by allowing a songwriter in, etc. So I see both sides because I was in art school, so I understand as an artist what the creativity. Because I was also a musician. I was a touring musician, so there's no way you're not influenced at a time by Bob Dylan. So just because of his influence, his breadth of work, all along the Watchtower itself, powerful song. He plays that song, creates the song, hears Hendrix play it, and says, it's your song. I mean, the guy is very humble, and he's a great lyricist. I can't deny it. But Nobel Peace Prize for literature, that one is interesting.
Well, people who make agreements to stop wars between countries, it's written on paper, and it's a kind of a song without the music. Literature again. So I could sort of understand it. I'm not that crazy about the Nobel any prize because Nobel funded it all after he invented dynamite and nitroglycerin, which has, in the ensuing years, blown half of the world off the face of the map. So I don't know. It's kind of like I don't know. I find it hard to even make a simile for it because it's such a hard...
dynamite was used for a lot of blasting to make railroads and roads, and there's good beneficial aspects of dynamite too. There's just not just the bad things. But I hear what you're saying, John. But
it was mostly the bad things that they use it for. Yeah, they do some land clearing, but they do another kind of land clearing with it, which blows people all over. They're not pretty indiscriminate. And he gave that to the world. And I understand he's trying to compensate by coming up with the Nobel Peace Prize because, he really made it so that we could kill more people with less effort.
Yeah.
So
literature is the written word, and certainly Dylan Dylan is the poet of our time, at least in terms of musical poet, and music is just a vehicle to deliver his message. And the Nobel really is based on the impact that it has on society. And so certainly you can't think about all of those protests in the 60s without, blowing in the wind, or, the message that music can change the way people think and the way people behave. And it's just great that he's still around. But I can tell you, I have a good friend who works in the catering business, and he often caters Bob Dylan shows. And you're not allowed to look at Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan does not want to be looked at. If you look at Bob Dylan and he finds out that you've looked at him, I guess he'll make sure that your catering company doesn't cater his concerts anymore. So he is a very difficult, peculiar guy who certainly has rubbed a lot of people in the wrong way for a lot of different reasons. But the impact that his music has had, and me, I'm a student of Jerry Garcia. Jerry probably plays the Dylan songbook probably just as good as anybody, certainly better than Dylan, at least in terms of vocals. And when Dylan teamed up with the Dead, man, that was just such a powerful couple of years back in 86 and 87. And I think that, you can't imagine what life would be like today without somebody like Bob Dylan or the Beatles, or all these old acts that played at Old Cella or whatever they call it, that desert gig that was down there. But you think about it, I mean, we lost David Bowie. We lost David Bowie this year. And this is the music that we all grew up with, and we all listened to it. And whether we like it or not, it's influenced who we are and how we look at different situations. And so I think it's very appropriate that they give it to Dylan because of the impact that his music and his message has had. I don't like listening to Bob Dylan sing. I like listening to Jerry Garcia play because he plays it beautifully.
Mark, everybody's lauding him now, and they're giving him a Nobel Peace Prize. But back then, he was under investigation by the FBI as a subversive, along with everybody else who was singing songs like that, who were bringing stuff to light that you're supposed to keep your mouth shut about. And that's what he was doing. And he didn't care about being an artist. Right from the beginning, he wasn't crazy about being out in the open. And I know you're a Jerry Garcia freak. That's clear. But not everybody is.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, Jerry said it just like some people like licorice and other people don't like licorice, but the people who like licorice really like licorice, right? And so, I totally get it. And again, that's what's moved me, and I think Mark and maybe a few other people on the panel. But it's great that, again, we're still talking about Jerry Garcia and listening to his music, and his music permeates our airwaves years after he's dead and gone, which tells you how important his music was. And, I know you and Sam grew up in California. I get it. But I grew up in New Jersey, and I'm telling you, again, Jerry Garcia has saved my life. I met my wife because I used to play in a Grateful Dead band, and my wife and I met because I used to play in a band. So I tell my kids all the time, if it wasn't for Jerry Garcia, you wouldn't be here. So music is my religion, and Jerry Garcia was the prophet that brought me into a better life. So that's what it did for me, but it doesn't do it for everybody.
I bet your kids hate you. When you say we, do you have a mouse in your pocket, or I'm just wondering what the reference?
No, I'm talking about my wife, my partner in life, my wife.
Oh, okay.
We, my family, right? I've raised two musical kids.
I was not a fan of the Dead, but however, the Dead scene was the only place back in the early 90s I could find or access psychedelics. So when I was going to college in West Virginia, we had to go up to Pittsburgh to the Dead shows. And then when I moved out west and was out here in the Cannabis Action Network, we were allowed to set up on Shakedown Street as a cannabis booth. And then in time, Jerry let us come in and do the Grateful Dead invited us in to gather signatures for initiatives back in '94, and that's where I met Bear. I actually elbowed Jerry Garcia once, just by accident. I just didn't know who he was and turned around and boom, The scene, however, was so influential, and that's what I will give. Was never a fan of the music. However, I like bands that covered the Dead stuff. I was just never a fan of Jerry's guitar tone, their singing, the jamming. I was from the hardcore punk growing up in the heavy metal era, so that was kind of my things. So,
Etienne, tell the truth. Isn't Jerry Garcia music repetitive? I can't tell one song from another.
I tell people it's just anyway, regardless, that's just my own thing, you know.
It's a personal flavor, personal taste kind of thing.
Exactly, like me. I love heavy, loud music. For me, that is as relaxing as somebody going to the symphony. Everybody's different. However, I will give Jerry his influence on the entire scene. All around the United States, which of course I had influence around the world of the drug culture, access to the drug culture. I bought, goo balls.
I mean, they were the house band at the acid test.
People used to walk
They
down,
were the band at the acid test.
Oh, I understand that. Right. I get that. I know where my friend lives at the acid house. So in Berkeley. So, I mean, I would watch people walk with huge Amanita muscarias through these parking lots, just holding them, mushrooms for sale. I mean, there was no other place I had seen or had access to that there was the drug culture, and there it was, and if you wanted to access it, you could. And there was the music, and at the end of every Shakedown Street, there was a chalkboard, and I gave respect to the Dead that every set was different, and every set was marked down on the end of Shakedown Street for everyone to see. As the songs played, somebody would relay it outside to somebody way before internet and before all these crazy phones. They had a network so that they could actually post what songs were playing live, and if you wanted to, you could buy the bootlegs. People had they had the tapes of the shows, because the Grateful Dead were also one of the early ones to allow people to come in and tape shows. So I saw people get into collecting shows, tapes. Oh, you've got this date, I've got this date. Oh, let's trade. So it created this whole community that between drug culture, music culture. I had no doubt but to respect the wholeness of it all, because I know it was created from the music, but the entire thing that actually spread from it all was quite humbling to witness and to be a part of. And I was very thankful for my times, even though I wasn't into the music. Even though I was inside, and that's why I was inside gathering signatures, because I didn't want to be in there dancing to the music. However, there were the Spinners, and if you don't know who the Spinners were, they're these people who were like whirling dervishes who do nothing but spin in circles. And I used to have to go sometime to side stage and go talk to the people, working for the Dead, et cetera, et cetera. And I could literally walk through these spinning people. I'm talking hundreds of them, people spinning to the music, and I could walk through them with never having to stop, because they would literally part in front of me, and I could turn around and they would close ranks behind me, and I could just continue wherever direction I wanted to go. But there was a whirling dervish in front, beside, and behind me, and I could walk through them seamlessly. So again, all these different facets of culture, from the tie-dye t-shirts to all that really encompassed nothing but respect because of the depth of it all. I've known few musicians or bands who could create that type of depth that still lives on after their lead singer dies. I mean,
but you know what? Incredible. Last week when I said out loud that people sold tapes and sold them at the Dead Show, Mark got all over me that no Dead person would ever sell a tape to anybody else. And it was a huge business outside.
I saw people buying and selling those tapes en masse. Yeah. But a lot of people were really, the upper echelon were those that only traded. They didn't sell, but I saw definitely.
I have over about 5,000 tapes. I didn't ever buy or sell a single tape. I've traded them. We traded them. We used to tape, and you traded your collection with someone else's collection. That's what you did.
Nonetheless,
if people were selling it, well, people were also selling Steal Your Face shirts, and the Steal Your Face is a registered logo to the band. The shirt police might come out there and confiscate those shirts, but half the time you see someone trying to sell you a $5 or $10 concert shirt, and some guys, hey, get your tour shirt here, tour shirt. That's some mafioso and his brother's selling nitrous in the lot too, man. Oh yeah, the mafia knows that when those traveling circuses go from town to town, they need drugs, and they need T-shirts, and they need alcohol, and they need everything, right?
And that's That's what he was saying, Mark. He wasn't saying the inner core, awesome dead people that you love and care for.
Oh yeah.
Selling tapes. He was saying, maybe not the
people on the outer fringes. No, I get it.
You got to remember, Mark's a Grateful Dead freak, and he also likes Toe Jam. So,
what?
Well, I happen to also know it was the Dave Matthews Police, so Corin Capshaw and Red Light Entertainment, that came down on a lot of local record shops that were in the practice of, developing a tape collection and then basically selling blank tapes and then offering just as a free service to, hey, and I'll make you a recording of this tape. Well, that's totally an illegal practice, and they stopped that. That's not happening anymore. But it was actually the Dave Matthews Police that came down on that.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I remember when Dave went big, they signed with like BMI or something, or
Red Light Entertainment is his whole thing. Red Light, yeah.
First time. It was BMI.
Oh, they went to RCA. RCA was their first deal, I think. I'm pretty sure. Under the Table and Dreaming in 1994.
Yeah, it was after that. It was the one
I was on that tour for. Yeah, I was on that Horde tour where he actually came out. I actually met him and the rest of the band. They were very cool with cannabis, and we were promoting hemp products and stuff. And later on, when I was at the Ecological Hemp Company, we actually ended up coating them in hemp. But that's sad. That disheartens me to hear that they were actually the ones to kind of kill that trade scene, because that was
the record company. It was when they signed on to the record company, and they wanted to make sure that they were preserving their intellectual property. Their intellectual property being their music.
And this is all.
And Dave Matthews
blew the entire music thing to hell.
Yeah, while Dave Matthews was trying to take the same road that the Grateful Dead did, which is saying, look, we'll let you tape, but we'll only allow that for non-commercial purposes so you can trade amongst your friends. While that's how it started, it didn't take till one scoundrel gets involved in that taping loop to say, hey, I could burn this to CDs and I could sell the CDs at my local record store. It was the local record stores that then were clamped down on, because they were the ones that actually had the bootleg copies that led to that. So, yeah. I know. I don't think there was ever any ill intent for the people who, came with their mics to the shows and were the artisan craft tapers looking to capture a live performance and share it with their friends. I think there's like
one proud of going and making the majority of his songs really radio friendly, and I think his taper scene was diminished greatly out of the 90s when it was just a different group going to see those shows. And for the Grateful Dead, they weren't making songs for the radio. So if you wanted to catch them, you better go catch them by taping them live.
Well, then, yeah. And then what happened on YouTube very recently, Mark, I don't know if you knew this, but Purple Rain, again, which is a Prince song, they were keeping very, very careful tabs on YouTube on what Prince material. Now, Fish used to cover Purple Rain, and there's a lot of Fish material up on YouTube. So what ended up happening, when Fish's recording of Purple Rain got caught by the Prince police, they tried to take it down. But yeah, I don't know how that ever got settled. But you may not see a Fish cover of Purple Rain on YouTube now because the Prince police had it taken down. Again, trying to protect their intellectual property.
Well, Prince wasn't so crazy at it so that he tried to take everybody down. But now that he's dead, the people who knocked him off want to squeeze every last penny they can out of his legacy. And that's human behavior. I mean, that's actually herd behavior. But
yeah, and it's amazing how history repeats itself when you look at Michael Jackson and Prince. I mean, here's two superstars that have more money than you could shake a stick at, and they have some fucking crooked-ass doctor feed them pharmaceuticals. This guy had drugs on him when he died. When he died, he actually had shit on him. Like, he couldn't bear to get from one side of the room to the other without having more shit on him. That's how sick these people were. And it goes to show you how overblown the fucking pharmaceutical industries have become, and these fucking crooked doctors who've taken superstars like Michael Jackson and Prince, who used to walk this earth, and look what they turned into. to ghosts of what they used to be. It's absolutely horrible.
And killed them. And
Well,
killed
but
them.
now they're selling,
and cannabis would have saved their lives.
but now they're selling their legacy. You know, there's a lot of strange things going on Earth like that, like Facebook. You know, that guy uses all your information to sell to advertisers and people to ensure his own privacy and being able to make his world tiny and private. And yet, so many people buy into that bullshit. I mean, I just cannot understand. I guess I come from an earlier time when bullshit was clearly marked and painted out. My dad was in the Army, and he was up for no bullshit whatsoever. If you told him a bullshit story, he'd first smile at you and then knock the shit out of you. And so it became a 1-2 step that I learned early in life. Better to just say the truth from square one, no matter what it is, and go that way. But nowadays, it's like, truth? Hey, we can spin that. And they turn it into something else entirely. And unfortunately, that's gone on and on and on until nowadays it's getting harder and harder to recognize the truth, especially when it comes out of companies and corporations and people who have something to gain by telling it to you in the manner which they did.
Yeah. Well, it's again, there's no better time than present, or whatever I said earlier in the show that sounded good.
And it's a good
Tomorrow's
time
the
for
future.
a bong rip.
Bong rip.
The future starts tomorrow. You know, social media is pretty widely used throughout the cannabis industry. I mean, Instagram was shutting people's accounts down. Are they still doing that?
I think so.
Yes, Todd lost his. Todd hemp.xxx, he lost his, and it never got back. He tried for it, but he's now grow medicine. But regardless, they're still doing it.
Yeah, even glass people.
Yeah, so again, another, I was just going to say, just another ramification of prohibition that we want to see go away.
My teacher used to say, if you want to be immortal, you have to live in the now. If you live thinking about the future, that you'll age. And if you live always thinking about the past, you'll age. But if you can bring yourself to the present, in the ever-present now, you'll be immortal. And so I took faith in those words when I heard him say that, because it made a lot of sense, and it tickled my brain in a spot that needed tickling. So I don't know. It's a bell. If it rings yours, there it is. Thanks.
But you can also look at that in terms of when you're in the present moment and your mind is in the now, usually you're calm, right? And when you're thinking of the past or thinking of the future, you're worrying or anxious or like, So it's like you can even bring that back to just like a physiological response back to stress and calm also that resonates with a lot of people.
Exactly, Natasha. You can connect it to expectations is what you're really working at. And when you have expectations, it's because you're not being in the present. And when those expectations don't come true, and you somehow deep down inside knew they weren't going to anyway, and that's what the stress is. Here you are trying to BS yourself into what you know is not going to happen. So does that create stress in your body? Yeah, your body's not capable of lying. The mind is. The heart's not. And so when the mind starts doing things that the heart doesn't approve of entirely, this creates a situation of stress. You know, most human beings, in fact, all are a bundle of desires, and they're busy trying to fulfill those. And that leads to expectations, and expectations lead to disappointments. So, you know, if once you see the chain of events, how that occurs, you can try to be less involved in that kind of thinking, that pattern, because it will affect your health.
I had such an interesting wrestle with this whole concept the other day. I was trying to make a piece of glass, and I knew, for whatever reason, I knew like from a really a place of truth that the piece wasn't going to work out. But I wanted to make a piece, and I knew that the only way for me to go forward would be to go through the motions of making this piece. And and normally it's just a very simple thing where you manifest making a piece of glass and the thing comes out and it's governed by all this normal physical stuff. But if you spin off into these tangents that we're talking about, it can become a real like indicator of like a barometer almost of what your thoughts are doing. And it was just a really interesting experience as I like had all these thoughts that you just laid out while I was trying to make this piece that I knew was going to break. But I also knew that if I had a negative attitude about it, that it would definitely break, but for a different reason. And it was just kind of a wild psychedelic Monday, I guess, without the psychedelics, just thinking.
Well, psychedelics is nothing more than our mind being stimulated by something to come to its natural state, which is awareness and knowledge of everything and all. We refuse to pay attention to that because the corporate and the people that run schools and businesses feed us another line entirely of what everything is all about. But really, if we were all of one mind, psychedelic would probably be the condition that we would all be in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's certainly like something to aspire to be able to like operate with such clarity and insight at all moments in time would be awesome. Really.
Well, we are that way. It's just that not all of us pay attention all of the time. It's a situation of mankind. It's a situation you're born in, and it's what you've chosen to learn by taking this dense level incarnation. And so can you judge it or say it's good, bad, or otherwise? I don't know. Hard subject to know or understand or give any kind of definitive judgment. Otherwise, the only thing I know is to not create harm and try to do as much good as possible.
Right. I mean, I think the real, the problem before us is to undo the lie that there's a scarcity. We live on a planet that, despite its density, if you throw some seeds on the ground, food will just erupt from the ground. It's not difficult to have an abundance here.
No, it's not. But the wealthy know that until they create the artificial idea in our minds and hearts that there is no abundance, and that like companies like Monsanto, we need to poison everything and everybody in order to make these crops grow so that everybody can be fed. What a load of horse hockey. It's been proved many times that organic farming is the equal, if not the better, as far as the health of the plants go. And I mean, let's face it, where they spread the Monsanto poisons around, the plants grow bigger, but the weeds by the side of the crops where they're growing are growing ever more strong and ever tougher. And I don't know if someday we can exploit some of those weeds that have grown into super weeds in some way. Otherwise, it's going to be a real problem because
they're not even growing more food if you measure it by nutrients. There's so much less nutrients to be in that food that it's like not the same level of sustenance either way.
Well, there are massive organic farms. There are not so many in this country, but elsewhere there are giant farms that deal only with manure and so forth, and they produce. You got India, a country that's feeding how many billions of people? Monsanto came there and started buying and selling seeds and spreading the poison around, and tens of thousands of farmers died from diseases associated with it, cancers, and or committed suicide because they couldn't afford to buy the new seeds for next year because Monsanto removes all the profit out of it. It's like these guys who sell these electric water heaters that are instant water heaters you put on your wall. It's about 1 foot by 1 foot, but they want to charge you a maximum amount of money for it. They're figuring all the savings that you're going to make on it, and that's the price they set for the piece of equipment. It's premium manufacturing with a string attached.
Well, yeah, because people are engineering for the purpose of profit, but there's no purpose in engineering towards profit, so you're wasting all of that thought.
But wait a second. Here's where science is evolving, and we could turn it back to Natasha here because the site that glyphosate, which is what Roundup acts on, is a enzyme in the shikimate acid pathway called ESPS synthase. And when they first introduced this, they didn't think that this was going to have any mammalian toxicity at all. But now science has now informed us that no, there's important bacteria that live in our gut. I do believe that ESPS synthase is certainly an important enzyme. And Natasha, does this resonate well with you at all? Do you know much about this?
A little bit, and another interesting thing that glyphosate also can do through this is it can interfere. This is how it works, actually. It interferes with the cytochrome P450 enzymes. That's how it kills insects and, well, other things that are, sorry, what is it killing again? Is it insects? Or
yeah, so,
I just know more about it.
It's a herbicide, and what it does is it keeps the shikimate acid pathway, I think, is involved in tyrosine biosynthesis, so they can't make essential amino acids. I think it's branched chain and aromatic amino acids. The substrate can't make anymore, so it dies. Yes.
But the aspect of it that I know how it interferes is actually through bacteria. So it interferes potentially with bacteria in our gut. So that's, and also our potential CYP450 enzymes. So these enzymes are important for detoxification in our liver and breaking down drugs and such. And so they're showing in preliminary experiments, again, test tubes, animals, those types of things, and plants, that it can interfere with these pathways. So we don't actually know what impact that's having on us. So concerning, very concerning. And it's awkward because my father's a farmer. So I grew up on a farm in Manitoba. And my dad's a grain farmer, so he grows canola, he grows wheat, he grows barley, he grows flax. And we often have these discussions, and a lot of the farmers are told information that isn't exactly accurate. My father understands, like, what's going on, but it's also like, once you're in this way of farming, it's not so easy as just saying, okay, I'm going to grow organic now. And so I have sympathy for the farmers who are also doing this way of agriculture. And I mean, personally, I consume organic food. I look at the literature. I know that organic food has a better nutrient profile. It doesn't have as many pesticide residues. I know the science. I understand the science, so I avoid those things. But sometimes I understand the disconnect between what's actually happening with the people and then what we're asking the farmers to do. Like, for instance, in the farming community, Dauphin, Manitoba is where I'm from. Most of the farmers use spraying techniques, and when one person decides to do an organic farming practice, there's wind. So it's hard if the whole community doesn't shift, it's hard for one farmer to even shift. So it's almost like education can't just happen on an individual level. It has to happen at a community level. Like, these whole groups have to, like, understand how it can help, because someone like my father, who understands the benefits of organic farming, like, believes in it also, he still continues to do traditional farming because he sees himself as, well, he's at the end of his career. And I mean, he's a very small farmer. This is a family farm passed on through generations. He's by himself. So, but it's still just the way does farming now. So it's a very complex topic.
But they all tell you lies. I remember at age 18 in Vietnam, the first time that the helicopters flew by, spewing out defoliant on the border at the Camp Cu Chi in Vietnam, it got on my skin, and it was 112 or 115 at 100% humidity. And so it gave the solvent that was in it evaporated off my skin, and it cooled me down. And I remember 2 days later, because we were always wearing these flak jackets and steel pots all the time, I asked this lieutenant, what is this that they're spraying out of the helicopter because it's cooling? And he said, it's defoliant. And I said, is it dangerous to us? And he looked me right in the eye and he said, it only affects plants. So it really isn't going to affect you. So when the helicopter would come by, we would pull off our flak jackets, pull off our T-shirts, pull off the steel pot, and go out and stand and let the mist hit you, because it would drop your body core temperature down 5 or 6 degrees. And at that temperature, the temperatures, the ambient that we're talking about all the time, it was a big cooling effect. And we did that, all the while that we were there because nobody told us different. And now, all these years later, they tell me that I have 2,4,5 and a few other things in my fat in my body that's not ever going to come out, and they treat me for it, and they mark you down as Agent Orange. And I've done a lot of studying about it, and it's sad because there was a lot of pointers way back then that it was extremely dangerous, but the way they had it used was just a bunch of guys load drums into helicopters or on planes, and they fly around and spray it on everything and everybody. And that was all the care that was ever taken with it. And I'm a result. I think Agent Orange probably, in my case anyway, turned out to be a preservative.
A lot. So
I want to bring it back to the glyphosate, though. Sorry, I just want to bring it back to the glyphosate for a sec. So, and back to Paul's mushroom talk last night. So that was part of what was his concern. So we know we have a bee issue, right? The bees are dying. They're doing all these weird things. And so part of what Paul was talking about are, through his research and networks, they found that bees are actually become deficient in this compound called p-coumaric acid. And this compound, it upregulates genes that encode for our cytochrome P450 enzyme. So that's what I was talking about, that glyphosate can potentially suppress. And these enzymes, I know them more from the perspective of vitamin D metabolism, but I mean, there's multiple of them. They do all these things, but one of the main things they do is break down drugs, they detox, they break down things. And so bees, they need these enzymes also. And so bees are having issues with this enzyme. And so part of what this mushroom compound that he found is that it can basically upregulate and get these P450 enzymes working again. And so that's just an interesting thing. And I also wanted to say, Marcus, have you checked out the dietary supplement that was given to us yesterday by Paul Stamets at his talk?
I did indeed.
So you guys, check this out. It's really, really cool. Here, I'll show it. Can you see it? You can purchase this. It is awesome for immune support. So it tastes actually good too. It's pleasantly sweet. But
is that the reishi mushroom tea?
Oh my goodness, it has so many things. And it's not teas. What he's done is he's actually taken the mycelium of the mushroom. So most supplements are taking the mushroom, like
the fruiting body,
the head of the mushroom, the fruit body. Yes, exactly. And so this contains the mycelium, which is basically, according to Paul, the immune system of the mushroom.
Yes.
So you're getting the best immune activating compounds. I'll just read some of the mushrooms in here. So there is the agarikon mushroom, the maitake mushroom, chaga, reishi, cordyceps, zuling, I haven't heard of that one before, birch polymore, royal sun blaze, oh geez, I don't know how to say that one, mizima, split gill, polyphore, turkey tails. I also didn't know about turkey tails for breast cancer.
That was an amazing story that he told.
Oh my goodness. Look up more info. Anyone who wants more info about breast cancer or going through that, look up turkey tail mushrooms. There's some interesting and exciting things going on. And there's also a study that it can be used in conjunction with traditional breast cancer therapies. I'm not sure exactly which ones he was using it, like not traditional, but like actual chemotherapy. It could be used as a complementary therapy safely, which is really interesting. So look that up. And then
what's the name of that box you're reading off again?
This is
Defense.
There you go. You can see it. Left. So it says, I think if you want to Google it, if you look up Paul Stamets, Stamets, comprehensive immune support, and it's called My Community.
You punch in host defense, Paul Stamets, you'll see the.
Also contains shiitake, Oregon Ganoderma, Artis conch, Amadou, and like each of these mushrooms is put in here for a reason. This is a well thought out supplement. I just got it last night, and I've just the brief reading I've been doing about it. Very impressed. It's organic. It's like water. It contains alcohol, 30 to 40%, and then all the mushroom. And then it contains mycelated brown rice, which is what's giving it a nice sweetness. So it actually, despite having alcohol, I mean, I took a nice dose last night just to try it out and was surprised at how sweet it tasted. So check it out. Save the world with mushrooms. Save your immune system. And this is just like a nice take to just keep your immune system healthy, and it's a really nice supplement. I'm impressed. I'm not normally that impressed by a supplement. Normally I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever, another nutritional supplement, but well done, Paul.
Yeah, it's natural. He's telling you the the nerve system and the immune system of the fungi, because the mycelium exists, and when it perceives that things are going badly or the seasons change, it puts the fruiting bodies up as a method of preserving and spreading itself.
Yeah, well, mycelium is where the chemistry is happening.
Compounds. Am I muted right now?
No.
Oh, okay,
you were being heard.
He just mentioned yesterday that the mycelium had a lot more. It was richer in the components that he was looking for than the fruiting mushroom itself.
Well, it's where the chemistry is happening. It's basically where the fungi is feeding, and so there's all types of proteases and enzymes and iron and all kinds of chemistry that's happening right at that frontier, because that's where the mycelium needs to get a food source to be able to thrive.
And the mycelium does some very interesting things underground. There's this particular kind that somebody discovered long ago, who's now passed from amongst us, called philosopher's stones. And it's the thickened part of the mycelium. And it's a decidedly different high than eating the fruiting bodies. If you allow that same stuff to go to fruit, you get one kind of high. And if you eat the philosopher's stones that form in it, it's a completely different trip, and it's, in my book, less toxic than eating the fruit above the ground. Crickets.
I never heard of that before.
You didn't hear that before? Have you ever had philosopher's stones?
No, not at all. I didn't even.
Well, see, there's this Mexicana and another one, Atlantean, that produce big sclerota in the when you're growing it as a mycelium, and you can see these things push up against the bag or against the door. And anyway, you empty it out, and then you'll get some sclerota that'll be as big as the palm of your hand. And those things are loaded with psilocybin and none of the other toxins that appear in the mushroom that fruits above ground for those.
Huh. Like the truffles of the psychedelic world or something.
Yeah, it's a truffle. Yeah, you can call it a truffle. It's not really a truffle, but...
Huh.
I also want to point out, like with fungi, so the way we're thinking as like with gut bacteria, everybody's talking about your gut bacteria and how your gut bacteria play a role in all like our mood and all these different things, our immune response, and they protect us and they can make nutrients for us. And from a gut perspective, they do all these things. They're basically part of us. We are a symbiotic being. But what's really cool now is the fungal biome is what's up and coming in the research. And so like even with Crohn's and colitis, they're finding new things. Like there was recently all this stuff going all over the press, like we found the cause of Crohn's disease. We found it with this like preliminary research, and they found this type of fungal thing. I still have to read the whole paper, but it was annoying me again when they're saying like, you know, breaking a disease, a complicated disease down to like, oh, we found the cure. But, you know, it's an aspect of the disease. This is really exciting. But the fungal biome, now that's going to be completely this whole area that's going to revolutionize medicine, just like the way the bacteria and is revolutionized, like changing the way we're thinking of all these things. Like another thing, I don't know if you guys know very much about fecal transplants in patients.
My sister is researching that right now. I was waiting for a chance to interject that. The fecal transplanting thing is amazing.
It's amazing.
Exactly what it sounds like, and they're getting crazy results. She keeps calling me. She's like, we're treating this, we're treating that. And people are just writing into them that are doing the research, like, have you tried this or that? And there's just a lot. It's a big buzz right now, correct?
It's fascinating. And so Crohn's and colitis is a newer area where they're looking at it. So what this is literally like poop supplements. You're taking like bacteria isolated from a healthy stool donor. And I mean, seriously, I was at a talk with gastroenterologists, and I mean, this is just like the way these talks go, where we're in a fancy hotel eating dinner, and the topic of conversation is how to do a poo transplant, like basically how to do it on the street. And we're talking like, okay, you take a Snickers bar, you want to poop the size of a Snickers bar, and maybe buy a new blender, because you probably want this blender just for this, and you need this much saline solution, and you put it on this, and you pulverize it. All right, now you got your poo smoothie. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get the bag, and you're going to fill this bag with the poo smoothie, and now here's how to insert it into your rectum. And we're all like eating our steak and salad. We're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. It's just like, it's intense. And so patients are already doing this. So now it's getting a little more refined, and what they're doing is they're taking stool samples and basically finding like multiple strains, like 10 strains, and then putting it into a pill form. So it's a little more appetizing to consume. Instead of a poo smoothie, you get a pill. But anyway, they don't find as good of results though, unfortunately. So now we're still trying to refine and figure out what the perfect blend is. And the best results so far are with an infection called Clostridium difficile, C. diff. So this infection is killing a lot of people. So what happens is when you go into a hospital for an infection or something, they put you on potentially a broad spectrum antibiotics. And what this happens is it not just kills the pathogen that is harming you, but also kills all your beneficial gut bacteria all over your body. And so Clostridium spores, and so everybody has a few of them kind of floating around in their gut. They don't really do anything because they're in spore form. What happens now when you get a big dose of antibiotics, it kills all your competing organisms, and all of a sudden these spores are like, hey, we got all this space, let's grow and see what's going on. And so they start to grow. And so in these people who continue to be on these antibiotics, these bacteria, C. difficile, they're very, very resistant. So this is a big issue. You'll see, if you just look up C. difficile in hospitals, you'll see like horror stories of just patients dying and they don't know what to do. And so that's why they got so desperate that they were basically willing to eat shit, like to see if this would help. And so it's helping. It's saving people's lives. Like, it's amazing. These people who have been on cycles of antibiotics and like chronic diarrhea. So what happens with a C. diff infection is you have chronic diarrhea, and then you eventually start developing something called pseudomembranous colitis, where it's like a scar tissue formation almost along your gut. Your gut stops absorbing nutrients. It stops working. And so these patients, they're just eating, they're like chronic diarrhea, it's a colitis. It's kind of almost similar to Crohn's and colitis. That's why I know so much about it, because we research and follow these types of conditions. And so fecal transplants are saving these people's lives. Look at the literature. I'll post some stuff on the discussion if people want to see more. And so now they're trying this for patients with Crohn's and colitis and having success. And it is very exciting. It's very exciting. And so, sorry, go.
There's a guy in Australia who has been taking fecal implants from Bushmen that he got from these guys because he figured, you know, these guys are very well balanced. And he was having problems anyway. He was also a colitis patient. It's probably how he ended up thinking this. But he took it in the form of suppositories, but he had an amazing recovery and no longer suffers from the colitis. And
yeah, most of when I was back at the dinner, they were demonstrating how to do it intrarectal, so like a suppository, and that is the way a lot of people are taking it. But like I'm not up to date with the recent research, so I'm sure they've even done some more amazing things. So look into it. But I do not recommend trying this at home because there's a lot of risk, even if you have a healthy friend donor. There's a lot of risks involved. If there could be infections they have. So if you're going to do it, it's best to go through a health professional, get your stool properly screened. There is a whole procedure. Be careful. This is not a do-it-yourselfer technique. Get help.
You know, I have known at least 4 or 5 people over the years who used Calema boards, and they used them constantly all the time, and all of them died from kidney failure. Interestingly,
what's a Calema board?
A Calema board is a thing that you put over the toilet, and you got a 5-gallon bucket of water above you, and you put it in your rectum, and you let it fill you up, until you naturally evacuate, and it's laid on a toilet and your other part of your it's just the idea of constantly flushing yourself. I say it's popular these days, but I noticed that from then till now, all those people who were eschewing that to me way back when I didn't take it up, I've all passed on from kidney failure.
Yeah, I see people like there's the detox clinic and stuff where they want to clean out your colon with water and stuff. Like I don't recommend that. I mean, maybe there are cases where that would be useful, but like you're saying, it can be dangerous. And like the colon is a sensitive area, like shoving water and stuff up there, like it can cause damage. It can disrupt your natural gut bacteria. It's better to take things in this way, let it work itself out. It's slower, probably safer. And that's the thing with your gut bacteria. It's a whole, like think of it as a mini planet, and think of all the bacteria as little humans, and there's little tribes, and they all do different things, and they interact and they work together. So it's like every time you're eating, every time you're doing these things, like think of you're feeding your little planet, like your little planet you. And it's like, do I want healthy bacteria growing, or do I want like angry gut bacteria that are gonna like and get your immune system all pissed off and break down the gut barrier and be all like, so it's like, no, you want the healthy, nice little neighbors.
Yeah, you don't want to feed
lactobacillus and the bifidobacteria.
You don't want
like,
to feed
you don't want the bad guys.
McDonald's.
Because like people don't realize what these bacteria are doing for them. Like they're making you vitamins, they're making you minerals, like vitamin B12. Your gut bacteria makes that for you. All these other B vitamins. So I know what they do mostly and how they can interact with vitamin D in the gut. But like they boost your immune system, so they outcompete other bacteria. So they're basically like a little army where they're like fighting for you. But you got to keep them healthy. You got to feed them right. They need fiber. They need even like more supplies, like other good bacteria. So things like kombucha. Are you guys drinking kombucha?
Yeah.
Drink kombucha. It's life-changing. It's amazing. When I have gut issues, I can drink kombucha and like the next day I feel better. That was my first experience with it. And I was like, this is powerful stuff. Like I suffer from gut issues. It is a fermented beverage. So it's black tea with sugar. It's fermented. It's a culture. It's a symbiotic culture. It's called, what do they call it? The SCOBY. A SCOBY. And so it's a blend of beneficial bacteria and fungi. It's very complex. There's different like cultures. You can buy kombuchas in the grocery store, but you can make your own and you culture it. And it's basically kind of like an alcohol culture. Like the bacteria feed on the sugar. They start making bubbles. You can make it own. Like some kombucha companies have issues because their alcohol content is too high and they get like recalled from the shelf. And anyway, and then it becomes like a mild like apple cider vinegar kind of flavor when it's ready to go. It's fuzzy, it's delicious. It's great replacement if you're craving like beer or that like bubbly kind of feeling.
It is not delicious. Come the fuck on. I mean,
you got to pick your flavor. You got to pick your flavor and you got to pick your company. There are some absolutely disgusting ones out there, I agree, but there are some delicious ones. So if you get a bad one, try for some better ones.
What company or what do you recommend?
What do I like? GT's. Asking my husband Dave what I like. GT's makes a really nice ginger, and their purple grape one I think are delicious. I get weirded out because you see the culture. Now I try to like say, hello, culture friend. You see it at the bottom. Kind of a mucusy thing. So when you get it and you open it, it fuzzes, and sometimes this mucusy madness kind of gets everywhere, and sometimes you're sipping it and you get some mucus on your face and you're like, oh my God, what is this? This is horrible. I just learned that there's a proper way of like when it floats to the top, you can dip it and kind of like get the culture out of there. What I do is I just let it sit for a bit until it all settles, and then I drink it. So these are powerful things. I don't even drink a full one your first time drinking one, because for some people it can like just go right through you. So drink a little bit, see how your body handles it. But you will feel amazing hangover cure, amazing just like vitality booster. When I'm feeling really anxious and grumpy, I'll be like, oh, I haven't had a kombucha in a while. Because what it's doing is it's setting up good bacteria in your gut. But you have to continually feed this good bacteria. And this kombucha culture not only has the good bacteria, it also has some of the food sources. So when you're combining, it's just this like rich blend of all this goodness. So even if you hate it, try just taking even little micro doses of it. Like I find it works even better than the probiotic pills. Highly recommend.
You know, probiotic pills is like a little gut bomb, though, isn't it? You know, when you're drinking a kombucha, you're getting the whole thing, and in a liquid form, and your body's able to accept that a lot better than those little probiotic pills, which are little gut bombs. They explode down.
Yeah, and there's other good bacteria ways. Like you can eat kimchi. So that is a Korean deliciousness where it's fermented cabbage with chili peppers and garlic. It's delicious. I love it. And there's also like sauerkraut. And I mean, there's all these ways to get good bacteria in your gut. So even like bringing it back to, I can't remember who was talking about the triclosan or however you say it in the antibacterial. Yeah. So we're bombarded with all these antimicrobials. So even if you're trying to like avoid all these things and like, we're just bombarded with things that are trying to kill bacteria because we're all obsessed with cleanliness. And I mean, yes, cleanliness is good, but over cleanliness is scary because you're killing all your good bacteria. So you got to basically prevent that from happening. You can't just avoid everything. So feed your good bacteria. One way to get those little bacteria bombs working better is the good bacteria, they need food. So prebiotic fibers, if you take that together with the probiotics, so with the fibers, with the bacteria, it basically gives the bacteria, it's like, think of like you're sending your little settlers onto Mars. Are you just going to send all the people? What are they going to eat? So you send them a little food packet if that's what the prebiotic fibers are. So that's things like inulin and fructooligosaccharides, and those are found naturally in like bananas and onions, but you can also get those in pill form. I suggest going very, very slow if you're getting them concentrated. If you have an inulin supplement, it can make your gut go crazy. It makes my gut go crazy because it's basically like, even if you have bad bacteria in your gut, you're just like, here's some food for everyone, and everyone freaks out and overeats, and the byproduct is lots and lots of gas. So you'll get very, very bloated. So very small amounts. But when you take these little foods with the bacteria together, you get better results. Even most of the clinical trials, when you go back and break them up, the studies that usually find the best results are the ones that use a probiotic with a prebiotic. So prebiotic fiber, those are like the food source for the bacteria.
So to the best
honey, and one more thing, honey, bringing it back to Paul again, honey, another thing with the colony collapse. So honey is a prebiotic fiber. And so he was talking about how bee farmers are feeding their honey, and there's all these issues with colony collapse. But a big thing is we're taking away their food source. So bees eat honey, which is this rich nutrient source. It's a prebiotic effect. It helps the bees create healthy bacteria also, and it helps them defend against. So now we're taking away the honey, and what are we giving them? We're giving them corn syrup, and as their food source. And so I don't know if there's something we can do where we can maybe like give them more honey with less corn syrup, or figure out a better ratio, because then the bees will have a better diet. The bees will have a better immune system. The bees will survive better. Plug for prebiotic fibers, also in honey.
So can I ask you a question?
Go. Yeah.
To the best of your knowledge, besides vitamin D, which I know you're a fan of, what other vitamins do we really need to take as a supplement? I mean, really, what is our body not making?
Yeah, and that's very individual. But in general, one thing that's interesting for folks living in Vancouver is our water has really low amounts of magnesium for some reason. And a lot of people are deficient in magnesium. So that's one I would suggest taking. Just even in general, just like if you're feeling like, if you're getting muscle cramps, if you're feeling achy, a lot of people aren't getting enough magnesium. One of the best sources of magnesium is green leafy vegetables. So I wonder why most people are deficient, not eating enough greens. And what magnesium does is anything that's green with chlorophyll, magnesium is bound to that. So any kind of green thing, you're like, yes, I'm getting magnesium. But you can also take like a magnesium citrate. Is that the one we take? Yeah, magnesium citrate supplement. I take whenever I'm finding my legs are getting crampy or something. So that's a good one to take. Vitamin D is very important because most people are deficient or have low levels, and we can make it from the sun, but we can actually only make it from the sun 6 months of the year. So the year in some places, like in Vancouver, I think only a few months of the year. And that's because as the sun shifts, the angle of the sun becomes such that the ultraviolet B radiation that needs to hit your skin is too far away. So not enough can reach us. So even in the winter, like you go ice fishing, you get like a sunburn, or you go whatever, sledding or something, you get a sunburn, you're not actually getting vitamin D. You're just getting a sunburn. So vitamin D, many people are deficient. It's supplemented into our milk supply, but it's not at a high enough level. Vitamin D3 is a really good one to take. And mushrooms are also a source of vitamin D, but they contain vitamin D2, which is a very interesting form of vitamin D. We don't know very much about it, but it also has benefits. And so I suggest highly taking some form of vitamin D, both of them even. But again, vitamin D, what my research was showing from my PhD is that very high levels of vitamin D can actually be a little dangerous. So you want to be very careful because it's actually a hormone. Like most people don't realize vitamin D series of steps to something called calcitriol, which is a hormone. It's very similar to something like a steroid hormone. It controls our immune response. So why I was studying it is a lot of people with gut disorders, they need vitamin D, and so that's part of the rationale behind why they have such a activated immune response. And so when they take some vitamin D, it can help suppress those immune pathways similar to something like steroids. But what my research was showing is at very, very high levels, and I'm talking like hormone levels, like you wouldn't get this naturally from taking a VD3 supplement or through eating mushrooms or anything. This would be like a hormone injection that you would go to your doctor to get. These very high levels, though, they were so effective at suppressing the immune system and a specific type of immune response called Th17 immune cells, which are really exciting because they play a role in all kinds of autoimmune disorders like multiple sclerosis, diabetes, psoriasis. That's kind of what the research is getting really excited about, these types of T cells. So vitamin D can suppress these types of T cells, but my research was showing that it was suppressing them so effectively that it was almost a risk for becoming more susceptible to an infection. So there's always a balance with these things. So you want to take enough vitamin D, but not too much. I can put more stuff in the comments about dosing if anyone's more interested. So vitamin D is a good one. And yeah, get your blood levels tested. If you're a patient and you're really concerned about your vitamin D, talk to your doctor, get your blood levels tested, because there's a narrow range of effective dose. And so most of the vitamin D recommendations are more directed towards bone safety. So we know that vitamin D can prevent rickets, but what most people don't know is vitamin D is also very important for immune response. And so, but you need a bit higher dose blood levels to get into this healthy range for immune response. But then you don't want to get into the super high dose, because what happens is very high doses of vitamin D, they help increase absorption of calcium, which is great. But now if you're getting too much calcium, you can have this issue that's called calcification of soft tissues. So basically your heart, your kidneys get too much calcium, they start getting like hardened and can actually, it can increase your risk of heart disease. So you want to really be careful with these supplements. Like when you hear a supplement is good for you, don't just be like, yeah, I'm going to take all my supplements every day. You can do that maybe with something vitamin C, like whatever, go crazy with vitamin C. It's a water soluble compound. When I'm feeling sick, I'll just like munch on vitamin C. But all of the other supplements, be very, very careful. Like for instance, folic acid, a type of B vitamin, amazing for helping cell proliferation. And so some patients think, oh, I should take folic acid because it'll help my gut regrow. No, it can also increase your risk of colon cancer. So it's like there's these balances, and it's important to do your research and stay within dosing when you're looking at new supplements to take. Vitamins act like hormones in some cases. They increase cell growth. That's good in some cases, but that is bad if you have cancer. So I know, like you hear patients, they come down with a condition and all of a sudden they're just like in a panic and like, I'm going to take everything. And it's like, be careful, find a health provider to talk to, like these things.
So you don't you hold with multivitamins, I'm sure.
I take a multivitamin. I do. I don't necessarily take it every day. I can put out my regimen of the supplements I take if you guys are interested, just what I personally take. For vitamin D, I take about 5,000 international units of vitamin D3 per day. In the summer, if I'm getting some sunlight, I might cut that dose off to lower.
Do you take an iron supplement?
No, do not take iron supplements.
Do not take iron.
Oh my goodness. Iron. Okay. Oh, I could do like seriously 4 hours just talking about iron and the complexities of that nutrient and the dangers. So many people are iron deficient. Don't get me wrong. Many people have iron deficiency problems. This is a big concern. But there's a lot of problems with iron deficiency. And if you have a problem with iron, yes, you may need to take a supplement, but do so with care, because what iron does is it is a bacteria pathogen's favorite food. Think of it as the limiting factor that determines if an infection is going to settle or not. I said, okay, think of like the bacteria, they're like colonizing us, and they're, you know, looking for new land, and they're hunting, they're looking for food. Iron is their meat. When they find iron, that's like us finding a buffalo, or finding like, that's like, we can survive now, we can stay. So when you're taking iron supplements and you happen to eat something that could have an infectious thing, you could actually be like, yeah, and like spearheading that. Like, what's interesting is in the gut, when there's, when I talk about these things, I'll have to put together more of my ideas to give you more of an overview of this. With the iron, just be careful, and if you do need iron, talk to your doctor, especially with Crohn's and colitis, about getting in iron. I can't remember what form it is, but injectable iron. It's much safer because then it doesn't go through the gut route and it doesn't aggravate potential pathogens. And there's lots of literature supporting this, and most gastroenterologists know this, but be careful with taking iron supplements. There's other ways to get iron if you need it. And if you aren't absorbing the iron from something like meat, if you're a vegetarian, there's ways to boost iron. Like, for instance, you can put lemon juice with your spinach. That will help boost plant sources of iron. But there's different kinds of iron. There's heme iron from meat, and then there's non-heme iron, which is more from plants. We absorb heme iron better. So that's why Tony, I need to iron my clothes too. That's a joke going on right now. Anyway, iron, with the heme iron from meat, that's the one that is the angry iron and can feed pathogens. So if you have an infection, you can reintroduce red meat after your infection if you love it. But if you're feeling sick, please avoid red meat. It is the best source of heme iron. It's great if you're healthy, but if you're sick, that will feed the bad bacteria. And I'll end it there, and I'll, tell you guys more about that at a later point. But be careful with the iron.
Awesome. Well, that was a really nice download there for sure, Natasha. Thank you for that. The room was loving it.
I'm glad I asked about iron.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't realize it was that bad.
It's crazy. There's studies where like good intentions, people going over to Africa, and they're like, oh, the kids are iron deficient. It's like, yes, they're iron deficient because they are severely infected with pathogens. So what happens is your body does something where it holds onto its iron all along your gut. There's this compound called hepcidin. It's released from your liver during infection, and it tells your cells to hold on to that iron. It's like hiding it. So then your bacteria can't find it. So in a lot of these kids, they have so many infections, and so good intentioned doctors go over, they measure them, oh my God, they're all iron deficient. We need to get these kids on iron supplements, iron cookies. They're developing like these cooking pots that leach iron into the food, or like iron. And then there's these horrible studies where they're showing that these kids are getting sicker. They're studying their gut population. They're like, oh, for some reason, the kids that went on the iron supplements, they have an increased risk of all these bad bacteria and a suppression of good bacteria. Oh, and more of those kids are dying. Oh, this is kind of awkward. Like, seriously, there's some weird studies out there where I'm like, why is nobody paying more attention to this? Like, stop giving sick kids iron. You have to look at all these other nutrients. Iron deficiency is so complex. It might be vitamin B12. It might be masked as another B vitamin. So they need to do a full profile, then assess where the actual nutrient deficiency is before they supplement. So these nutrient supplements, like, these are so complex, and that's why you always get these like pieces coming out in the press where people are like, oh, vitamins are bad and they're dangerous. It's like, sometimes, in some cases, like, don't take vitamin E if you have lung cancer. That will make your lung cancer get worse. But if you don't have lung cancer, vitamin E is an amazing antioxidant. So it depends on what type of illness you have, where you are in your state of health. That's why it's very important to work with a health professional, or get really geeky and do a lot of research. Yes, you can learn a lot, but keep an open mind and don't just believe the first piece of literature that you read. You need to be thorough. This is complex. I spent 7 years just studying vitamin D in the gut. I don't even feel comfortable talking about vitamin D in something like another body tissue because it's completely different. These are complex.
You take such a massive dose. You take 5,000 international units a day. And recently, my doc assigned me 1,000 international units of it a day, and
that's low.
Well, my body's
They're doing studies They're doing studies with like 50,000 to 500,000. I mean, those are higher doses. Those are more therapeutic doses. But 1,000, that's like a minimum dose. That's fine. But if you are still feeling like your inflammation is maybe not the best, or like, you can up that dose a little bit more. Like, talk to your doctor just to be safe. But 1,000 is a pretty conservative dose. Like, the upper limit right now is considered 10,000 international units, and they've done long doses of that. Like, for instance, they've shown that spending 20 minutes in the sun at the peak time of summer, when you can make the best amount of vitamin D, your skin, the dose where your body basically, like, your body's amazing. It'll make vitamin D, and then it will naturally start breaking it down if you make too much. So the upper dose at what your body kind of starts breaking it down is about 10,000 international, equivalent to like a 10,000 international unit dose. So that's kind of how they got some of those guidelines to approximate estimates. But they go way higher in dosing. And your body is very good at regulating, like the vitamin D3 form. That form you could take all day, but when your body starts breaking it down into its hormone, calcitriol, that's the hormone that can do all the crazy things like suppress immune responses and do other things like affect your gut barrier, affect your gut population. Like, vitamin D is so crazy intense of all the things it can do. Like, get some sunlight, get some sun, get your vitamin D levels checked. It can change your life. Like, there's people who dedicate their whole life. Like, we saw Paul, the mushroom guy, last night. There's people who dedicate their whole life just to talking about the benefits of vitamin D because it's that important. It's very important.
Well, I'm going to up my dose if that's the case, because I wondered if it wasn't a low dose, and I'm glad you think it is. And I'm going to definitely have a talk with him or her. It's hard to tell who my...
I'll even send you info about UVB lamps. So this is where I'm very interested in it, because if your gut isn't functioning properly with someone like Crohn's and colitis, if you're taking supplements, it's a complex nutrient. It needs to break down in your liver. It needs to go to your kidneys, and then it circulates through your blood. So if those tissues aren't working properly, your vitamin D metabolism isn't going to work properly. So what is really cool is your skin can make vitamin D. And so sunlight, there's a risk of skin cancer, so you have to be careful. But there's new technology where you can buy ultraviolet B radiation. So that is the specific spectrum of light that hits your skin and then converts a cholesterol form it's made from cholesterol, but when the sun hits it, it's converted into vitamin D. So they can take like a lamp basically, and it's called narrowband UVB radiation. And you can buy a lamp like this and put it on your skin and take 30 seconds. We were doing it in my lab because we have one. And you can make enough vitamin D without getting a sunburn, without getting a risk. There is a risk of using this inappropriately because you're like, oh, I'm not feeling anything, I'm going to keep going. It's like, no, that's bad. That could increase your risk of cancer. It's a hormone. You need to be very diligent in your dosing of the UVB lamp, but you can buy these and get very good dosing. And so there is some studies showing that in patients with psoriasis, this is a form of therapy. So they actually get UVB and narrowband UVB therapy at their doctors or at a clinic, and they can control their psoriasis and what happens is the vitamin D, it can control in the hormone form. It can control, again, that T cell I was talking about, Th17 T cells. It can suppress those angry T cells, and this has a cascading effect that suppresses the overall immune response. And so we can look at what's happening in patients with psoriasis because they have a similar immune profile to patients with Crohn's and colitis. We can then take some of that info and apply it to these patients, and that's what people in our lab are starting to look at, and it's really, really cool. It's really exciting. And there's also some cool work where they show that if you have a bath in magnesium salts before you do the UVB therapy, you get even better results. And this is bringing it back to those old therapies of like going in the beaches, like the salty beaches, and then getting your sunlight and the fresh air, and people having all these miraculous cures of their inflammatory conditions. And it's so cool that we can bring it back to these like pathways and be like, this is what's actually happening. And then bring it back to these natural therapies where it's like, well, maybe being out in the sunlight and going in the ocean is better. But if you can't get that, then maybe you can do, magnesium Epsom salt bath at home, and then your little UVB lamp. So you get the next best thing. You can at least get some of those functions.
Well, it's all great information, and people are gobbling it up right now for certain. I'm sure they're going to be going back in time and re-listening to some of this. I know I will be myself. we don't all have the time to study as in depth as you have been able to on this. So really, thanks for sharing, Natasha. It's great. Much appreciate all of it. You're definitely.
Can I ask about another vitamin? Vitamin A. I mean, vitamin A. One of the precursors to vitamin A is beta carotene, and it's really one of the major monumental scientific achievements is the so-called golden rice, which is being able to put that gene for that pathway to basically make that extended polyene, which is then the precursor to vitamin A. But then the whole pushback, well, you're frankenfood, you're manipulating pathways, that's biotechnology. But the fact is that if we lived here in the United States or in the modern world where you have a vitamin A deficiency and you need that kind of engineered food for survival, it would be a completely different situation. So there's places in the world, I guess, that don't have enough vitamin A in their diet, and if they didn't eat this genetically engineered rice, they would perish.
Well,
so
and
what's your...
Yeah, vitamin A is super interesting also. It's very similar to vitamin D. It's also multiple forms, and it has a hormone form called retinoic acid. And actually, the hormonal form of vitamin D, calcitriol, and the hormonal form of vitamin A, retinoic acid, they're like super buds. They do all these cool things together. They even find studies where they find you can actually lower your dose of vitamin D and lower your dose of vitamin A and take microdoses of them together, and you actually get better results. And so they activate through these things called nuclear receptors. And so these hormones actually go into the DNA and shift how the cell responds to things, which is really cool. There's not, most vitamins don't do this. Vitamin D and vitamin A do. And it's interesting because these are the fat-soluble vitamins, right?
Exactly.
So it's bringing it back to all these fats. And so I'm always interested, how are these things interacting with cannabinoids? Because absolutely they are on some level. And that's who knows what's happening? Like sunlight. Why does sunlight feel so good? What's happening? Is there is anandamide being made? Is it boosting up our other compounds? And so, sorry, back to the vitamin A, it's complicated because you can also make vitamin A from plants. So like you said, it's a precursor is beta, which one is it? Sorry. Yeah, beta carotene. I want to say beta caryophyllene. That's what I've been talking about. And so there's precursors to vitamin A in plants. And so even in chili peppers, that contains some of the vitamin A-like compounds. And so that's another reason.
Lycopene is another one I think that's in
lycopene,
tomatoes.
There we go.
Lycopene is the red pigment that's in tomato. Right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So no. Thank you. I was forgetting about lycopene, and lycopene is a perfect example of a vitamin A compound that most people know about. And so your body can turn that into other forms of vitamin A, not necessarily as effective. Another really cool thing about vitamin A is liver is a crazy, crazy high source of vitamin A. And so there's cases of people overeating liver and actually dying from vitamin A toxicity. So be careful if you're eating liver. But yeah,
I'm glad it tastes like shit.
But yeah, if you don't,
but some people are eating shit.
There you go. But no, vitamin A is essential to life, and if you don't have enough, your vision doesn't work. It's essential for your immune system. All these things. So you're absolutely right. There may be cases where we do need to shift the way things are grown in order to provide people with access to this important nutrient. But I don't know if GMOs are the answer. I don't know. Maybe they are. I don't know. As a scientist, I can appreciate the technology and the geekiness of being able to shift things and do things with plants. As, I don't know, a plant person, there's some concern. But I think we do need it. But then I also think that they probably just haven't looked enough at what's already growing around them, because there probably are some plants that have amazing sources of vitamin A or vitamin A precursors that they could eat. So I don't know. I'm a little mixed on those issues. But very, very important nutrient. And another one that be very careful. You can take too much vitamin A. Do not fuck around with vitamin A. Seriously. Be careful.
Well,
do not take a vitamin A supplement. Don't take a vitamin A supplement. Take beta carotene. Try to get it through food sources. Vitamin A is one of the only supplements I would say do not take. It's an intense one. It is a hormone. Don't take it. If you need, and the multivitamin is okay, but don't purposely go out and say I need to get my vitamin A. Be careful.
It's a
powerful one.
When I was a kid, I had all of the liver that I ever want to have for the rest of my life at one meal. I was completely.
I don't mind liver. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. My mom is French, and she would always cook us her liver and fried onion dish, and so we always had it growing up. And it has a very distinct taste, but now I haven't eaten fried liver and onions in years. But liver pate, I love it. It's something about it. It's like so nostalgic.
Leather, and I try replacing it with leather and see if it's the same thing. I think it's the fried onions that tasted good, not the liver.
No, it has a weird bitterness that you almost like crave. I don't know. It's a very distinct taste. I'm like thinking of it right now. I'm like, yeah, get some liver.
Yeah, my mother used to make it all the time, but I only ate it once. And after that, when she would start to cook it, and the whole house stunk up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would leave the house and take on, as long as possible till that odor went out, because we had a big family, and Jesus God, everybody loved the liver, and I was happy to give up mine. People would ask me before I left, "Are you going to eat your liver?" No, I'm not.
It's the perfect vitamin, though. Really, like nature's perfect vitamin. If you are vitamin deficient, even if you're vegetarian, maybe take a little bit. Like you can even buy liver supplements. There's some companies that actually make these all natural supplements, and they take basically liver. And cod liver oil is another great example. That's source of vitamin D, vitamin A.
That's some nasty shit. I took that as
I used to take spoonfuls of that. I developed a liking for it. I know, it's totally weird. It's disgusting.
Huge capsules that
I liked the feel of it.
They get stuck in my throat, and then all day long I just have the cod liver oil burps. Just like
yeah, fortunately technology has evolved. So they can now make those pills that like fish oil and stuff like that. A lot of people complain about the burps they get from it, but you can actually get certain pills. I don't know exactly how the technology works, but it has it's enteric coated so that it doesn't come up and you don't get those fishy oil burps. So
well, they're not making it in fish, aren't they? Making it in bacteria? I think they're expressing it in bacteria now, right? I think some of these omega supplements.
Oh, omega, yeah. There's a spectrum.
Yeah, are no longer quote unquote fish oil. In fact, the fish doesn't make the oil, isn't it? The bacteria gut inside the fish that actually makes the oil. I think.
No, it's more the eating the LJ that it's like a bioaccumulative effect.
Okay, but bacteria is not involved in there, though?
Making I don't know at that point. What are you saying about the bacteria with playing a role in making the omega-3 in the fish?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think there is some role that they play in that. I'll look it up and get back to you.
I want to, yeah. But no, they definitely are. Sorry, I want to know more about that. That's really interesting. But they definitely, there's a whole spectrum, like all kinds of things of supplements. And so you can get whole fish oil. You can get isolated compounds like the DHA, EPA. That is a supplement I would definitely recommend people taking for brain health. Fish oil is amazing. Even though I was eating vegan for a year, I still took my fish oil supplements. Oh, sorry. And there's also LJ oil for you happy vegans out there. And I will, okay, what do you got? This one, LJ omega-3. Can you guys see that? From London Drugs.
Yeah, so isn't that not derived from fish at all? It's derived from...
No fish. This is all, yes, this is a nice vegetarian.
So I may have misspoke. I was referring to essentially plants being able to make that as well as I think bacteria can be trained to make those.
Oh yeah. I get what you're saying. From a manufacturing point, they can get the bacteria to just pump out a bunch of these. Yeah. Sorry. But that's intriguing because that made me think in the natural process is something like that going on. I don't know, maybe, right? But absolutely, yeah. It's a quicker, more effective way to they just synthesize it versus isolating it from a whole plant one. Oh, and this is the other one I take.
Once they have the pathway down,
this is an awesome one. So this has krill oil and omega-3. Krill oil is another really cool one. It's a crazy antioxidant. I'll just list all the supplements I take at the bottom, and that will be easier. And then whatever, you guys can ask me more questions about them.
These long polyunsaturated acids that these are made out of are similar to arachidonic acid, which again is the precursor to anandamide and 3-AG,
yes.
2-AG, right? So you would imagine that again, all of these things must play some similar role. And you've said a few things that really, again, I think are right on, which is that the fat solubility of these things give them somewhat a preferred passage through membranes, and that's very, very important to get the signal from the outside where the environmental stimulation is happening inside to the cell, or like you were saying, into the nucleus itself, where these things actually have to find receptors and cause a myriad of biological events after they bind.
Yes.
Listen, I extracted some krill oil from a giant load of krill in Switzerland. And if you smelled that stuff, you'd think twice about taking it and putting it in your mouth, because it smells like a fish's ass.
Smells like medicine.
It's really bad.
But to wrap it up too, I want to bring it back one more thing. The get your healthy fats, and then you can make your endogenous cannabinoids.
There you go.
Your
yeah.
anandamide.
Right.
That's
right.
A great
Exactly.
point on right there. Thank you guys, everyone, for showing up for Hash Church today, episode 108. We managed to squeeze off 4 hours, thanks to Dr. Mark and Dr. Natasha laying down some great knowledge today. Always happy to have Etienne and Johnny B and D420K. Skunkman Sam was quiet today, but he was here. Indra, always a pleasure. And I guess we'll just say thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Thanks.